ladies and gentlemen, the time is now 5:32, and we will go ahead and start tonight's meeting. First, I want to start by the meeting with a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll go ahead and recognize our student tonight that will be leading us in the pledge after our moment of silence. Leading the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge today is Midland High School senior Kiora Garcia. Kiora is a cadet in the Midland High School JROTC. She has received the Attendance and Longevity Ribbons, the Outstanding Flight Award, and serves as a Director of Cadet Training. When asked about Kiora, Sergeant Chick tells us how proud he is having seen her grow from a novice cadet to a highly effective senior leader over all the freshman cadets. Kiora has a course load of physics, pre-calculus, U.S. government, senior seminar, business management, and English 4, in addition to the JROTC. Outside of the school in the JROTC, Kiora enjoys spending time with family and loved ones. After graduating high school, Kiora plans on attending college and majoring in business management. At this time, we will take time for a moment of silence. Please rise. Okay, Kiora, you will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
I'm sorry. Not just yet. Okay, I want to make an announcement tonight before we get started. Because of the wind and the weather, we have had a power surge on this campus. And so should that happen, we will take a 15-minute recess to restart the system so that we make sure that we're able to get everything recorded and the PowerPoints back up for the board to see and for the crowd to see. So should that happen, I just want to make you aware that just because of the weather, we don't know if that will happen, but we want you to be on the alert so that we're not all kind of scattered here. So at this time, we have a discussion about pulling item 8, discussion action items 8B, Young Women's Leadership Academy Phase 3. Board members, do I hear a motion?
I move that we remove it from the agenda.
We have a first by Mr. Marquez. We have a second. We have a second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor of tabling discussion item 8B, Young Women's Leadership Academy, for a separate meeting that will be held next Monday, please raise your right hand. We have four members and 4 against, 2 members against. The motion passes 4-2. Thank you. At this time,
Who's the other member against?
Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis is not here. Mr. Booker and Mr. Tichetti voted against. And Mr. Davis will be joining us. He was attending a funeral out of town today and got caught in the dirt storm, and so they had zero visibility and he had to pull over, so he will be here shortly. And so I don't want that to be a disruption when he comes in, because he will join the meeting here shortly. At this time, I want to we want to move to item 2, presentation, recognitions, awards, and announcements. And Mr. Horner, we would like to recognize you first.
Thank you, President Murray, trustees, Superintendent Ramsey. This time what I do ask our students and their sponsor directors to go ahead and line up over here to my right, if you would. While these ladies and gentlemen are moving up, I'd ask the board to come around. We're going to recognize these students and not shake hands, but we can bump fists. And we have hand sanitizer for everybody at the bottom ready to go as well. So what we're doing today, and I certainly appreciate on behalf of Deb Shaw, Director of Fine Arts, Shannon Torres, Principal at Lee High School, and Dr. Leslie Sparcello, Principal at Midland High School, appreciate the opportunity to recognize these students that are before you today that are Allstate, either choir or band. And so just a few words about Allstate. Allstate Choir, for example, starts out with 70,000 students beginning the audition process. And it's a very rigorous process, and ultimately the state selects for a variety of different levels. They select Allstate choir students, and that number goes from 70,000 to under 1,800 students in the entire state. So we're very proud to recognize Allstate choir members from Lee High School Choir, starting with Tayo Dada. While Tayo's going across, I take this time to brag that I just had the chance to watch the boys choir just the other day and heard both Brahms and some music in Russian. So they were fantastic. I don't know what they were saying, but they were doing a great job. So. Also, Allstate Choir from Lee High School Choir, Carson Page. And not to leave this gentleman off, but want to make sure we recognize our Lee High School Choir Director, Guadalupe Rivera, all the hard work that the director puts in. We're very proud to have Dr. Rivera on staff with us. Allstate Band has a similar process. Allstate Band has more than 70,000 students that start the process, and they also select through their Texas Music Educators Association a Allstate Band, again through different levels, that gets narrowed down to around 1,700 students. So one of these 1,700 in the state of Texas is Riley Kitch, Midland High School. While Riley is going up, I'll let you know she qualified on the bassoon. Also from Midland High School, Kobe Mount. Kobe was selected as Allstate Band with a baritone saxophone from Midland High School. The Midland High School director has been directed and is directed currently by Brian Collins. Next, I want to recognize qualifying on the trumpet, Braxton Leak. Braxton qualified on the trumpet and is a student at Lee High School. And recognizing the director of Lee High School Band is Steve Duyan. Once again, it's such an honor to recognize these students, and my words don't describe near as to the level that an Allstate student really achieves. So we're very proud of them, and I'm very proud of the directors and their programs. Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to item 2B, and we'll have the same presented for item 2C, but the first one is item B, TASBO Purchasing Award of Merit Recognition. Heidi Pena and team, and the presenter is Mr. Dodds.
Good evening, President Murray, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Ramsey. Texas Association of School Business Officials has a purchasing award of merit. It was devised by the Purchasing and Supply Management Research Committee that is organized by TASBO. This is open to school districts, open enrollment charters, and education service centers that are committed to following the professional standards in the acquisition of goods and services. This is something I know Midland ISD has looked forward to. They have wanted to apply, just didn't feel like that they could. This year, under Heidi Pena and her team, they did apply, and out of the 1,200 schools and open charters, there was 53 schools selected, and Midland ISD was selected for that. And generally for purchasing, you're either good because you approve their purchase order, or you denied a purchase order. And sometimes you get more denials than you get that, but following the standards that needs to be followed and doing what's right for Midland ISD and Midland ISD students, that is something that they have strived to get there and was able to be awarded by Texas Association of School Business Officials. And so if Heidi Pena, I know her and her team worked very hard in trying to get everything together for this award, and working each and every day to make sure that Midland ISD follows the procurement measures. And so they do have a plaque, and it says TASBO Award of Merit for Purchasing Operations, presented to Midland ISD, awarded by Texas Association of School Business Officials. And just congratulations, Heidi, for doing such a great job. Our second presentation is by the Texas Association of School Business. Nope, I did it wrong. Texas Association of School Boards. And this is, we use several different co-ops, but this is Buy Board Co-op, and I am going to introduce Lou Mialis. Come on down. Sound like the price is right. And I'll let him do the presentation.
Good evening, distinguished board members. Just wanted to present to y'all a check for your buy board purchasing this past year. The district, really, Heidi Pena and Mr. Garcia and the purchasing staff did an awesome job this year. The district received $50,315 in return just for using the cooperative. So this is a great thing. They're just doing the regular purchasing, but by using the buy board, it actually gives money back to the district. So what a better thing. So don't want to take a lot of your time, but we gave out approximately $10.5 million this last year. There was about 2,000 entities that actually received rebates this year. And we had approximately, I think we do about 1.2, a little bit over that $1 billion worth of purchasing through that buy board. So it's an awesome tool to use, and we appreciate the district for using that, but this is just a token of our appreciation for what y'all do. Thank y'all.
Dr. Ramsey, get my picture.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Pena, and your team, Mr. Garcia, for all that you do, and we sure appreciate the rebate check. That is quite awesome for our district. At this time, we're going to move to public forum, and I believe we have 21 speakers, give or take, and so we're going to be very conscientious about the 3-minute time tonight. And what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with the people that aren't talking specifically about the mask mandate. And I'm going to save you guys for last. And I think there's several, 14 or 15 maybe. But we'll put you right before the discussion item. That way you get to speak right before we talk about masks. So to start off, I would like to recognize Harley Pitts. And she would like to speak on Wi-Fi. Welcome, Mrs. Pitts. Thank you for being here tonight.
To Superintendent Dr. Ramsey and the entirety of the school board. Hi, my name is Harley Pitts and I'm a junior at Lee High School. A little over a year ago, our lives changed for what seemingly feels like forever. COVID struck us harder than what anyone imagined, which means preparation was little to none when it comes to education. Recently, it was decided that my school needs a new name. That's not my issue. The issue arose when it was claimed we have the money for this name change, but the schools don't have necessary resources for these times. We had the money for new tiles in our hallway and to fix them when the colors were wrong. But the classrooms surrounding those tiles don't even have working internet. With COVID, a lot of our assignments are online, even when we're physically in class, which can be great. It limits interactions. However, it also means that we need Wi-Fi. Out of my 7 classes, I have decent internet in 1. I can barely do my work in classes while actually at school because I don't have the resources I need. That means 6 classes of schoolwork are piled up into all homework when most should have been done at school. I knew I'm not the only student who felt this way, so I created a survey and sent it out to my peers. I did so to know their views on my topic in ways that they believe can be improvement in this area. My first question was, does Wi-Fi need to be prioritized more at LHS, as in adding more accessibility such as hotspots? Not shockingly, the result was out of 32 respondents, 100% said yes. The next question was why they believed this. Responses included, because internet is needed to use educational resources. We use technology and internet all the time, but learning becomes difficult when Wi-Fi isn't always accessible. And a lot of the schoolwork we do now is online, so it's important to have it readily available. To reiterate the schoolwork point, my next question was, is most of your work paper, online, or a decent mix? 63.6% said a mix, 36.4% said online, and 0% said paper. This is further proving that it is not just some students dealing with an inability to do schoolwork at school because it's online. My last question was, how do you think the district can help you do better with COVID learning, both MOA and in person? Allow me to speak on 2 specific answers. 1, many assignments are given and due within the same day now that it's online. I think it's safe to say that many kids are so behind because we are all swarmed with work. I think there should be something put in place that we should have at least a few days to complete these assignments, as well as giving better Wi-Fi and hotspots to the school. We cannot turn in and get the work done unless we have the resources to actually do so. 2, I think reducing the amount of homework but amping up the amount and experience of in-class lectures would be beneficial for me. As a general rule, if I didn't learn it in class, I won't learn it on the homework. All homework does is stress me out. These 2 prove my point. Students are not learning as they should right now. The inability to do work in class is only harming us. Do not say that you value education when you don't prioritize what needs to be done for our education. I want to go back to normal just like everyone else does, but I think that we can all agree that that won't be anytime soon. So we need to adapt with the times and finally prioritize what needs to actually be prioritized here, which is our education and the resources we need for that education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pitts. The second speaker tonight that we will welcome to this microphone is Alejandro Ceballos, and the topic is mental health crisis response. Alejandro, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Ramsey and the school board for inviting us out today. Okay. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 1 in 5 children and adolescents experience a mental health problem during their school years. Examples include stress, anxiety, bullying, family problems, depression, learning disabilities, alcohol, substance, and drug abuse. The place where students spend the majority of their time is at school. A typical U.S. student spends 8,884 hours at school in their lifetime. Along with these, there are a lot of factors at home and in the regular community that they go through. Despite making up close to 5% of the global population, the U.S. has nearly 25% of the world's prison population, and Texas has 154,479 people incarcerated right now, the highest out of all states in the U.S. And as such, it's safe to assume that some of these individuals are parents. So what's being done for these students who have the disparity of a single parent at home? 97%. 97% of women have admitted to either being sexually assaulted or sexualized in a public or private environment. If we take into account the 2,000 students in our high school alone, that's about 945 girls who are being harassed or physically assaulted outside and inside of school. Substance abuse in teens is rampant, especially in the light of extreme and prolonged periods of isolation that have accompanied the pandemic and are still present in our virtual learning. And an even more pressing matter is the amount of legal-age teens selling minors these products, engendering an environment of adverse health effects. But moreover, this problem stems from the lack of outlets for teens to open up to, and consequently, they're finding these outlets elsewhere. And this is my point. If we are teaching students about being drug-free and claiming to equip them for the harsher realities of the adult world, all of it's being done in vain if there aren't any structures or systems that are readily available for students to come to when they eventually do make these mistakes or are afflicted by these issues. What can be said about the school system if we're just referring students to third-party therapists? The students likely can be seen as outcast or useless to the school system in general. So my proposition is that we as a district should aim to provide crisis counselors and trauma counselors for students at all times, not just when there's a possibility of a shooting, not just when a child commits suicide, not just when adults deem it fit, because honestly it's not up to the adults of past generations to decide when it's appropriate for students' mental health to be assessed. It should be up to the students, and in a more vocal and liberal time in America today, especially for students, the outcry for student recognition has been long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ceballos. Next up, and I apologize because I'm going to get this wrong, Stratified Damaji. We will welcome her tonight, and her topic is the dress code. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Oops. Good evening, Dr. Ramsey and members of the school board. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Tamila Dell, and I am in the 11th grade, and I am a student at Lee Senior High School.
And I'm Shubi Demija. I am also a junior at Lee Senior High School.
The issue we would like to discuss with you is the enforcement of the student dress code. First and foremost, I would like to say that I very much agree with the fact that there is a student dress code in place, and that is because I believe that it is preparing us for a professional workplace. My main issue is that there is an avid disparity between the way males and females are dress coded in the building. Boys often get away with wearing short shorts and tank tops, while females cannot wear them because their shoulders are apparently attractive. Girls with bigger bodies often get dress coded more for wearing the exact same thing as a smaller girl. I can speak to testament of this fact, which makes the entire situation a breeding ground for body dysmorphia and insecurities.
What this does is it makes students believe that they are flawed and their appearance needs to be changed, which we shouldn't be promoting in a school environment.
We also should not be teaching girls to censor themselves, but should focus our energy on getting boys to stop participating in the sexual objectification of females. Upon taking a survey on a number of students, I have found that 12% more girls, which is 132 more females than males, feel insecure in the way that they dress and very uncomfortable because they often feel that they will get dress coded than boys. All in all, if you are going to dress code one party, I kindly ask that you dress code all parties involved.
Then administrators send females to the office for showing a little more skin, but if a male's pants are too low, then they simply tell them to pull it up. And once if students don't do that, if they don't listen to the administrators, then they just don't follow up, unlike how they do with females. So our solution is that people who are enforcing this dress code must know that it needs to be equally enforced and everyone needs to be treated equal. It's not something teachers are well aware of, and when they get together throughout the year at meetings, this topic should be discussed and brought up. so this disparity does not continue. Along with this dress code, it should be more specific in the sense that the amount of inches that are acceptable for shirts so that all students are aware of the exact measurements, and this doesn't reoccur. And one of our biggest concerns today is that our thoughts won't be reflected in your actions, so we strongly urge you to visit this topic with your superiors. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Adele, I apologize for not recognizing you from the start. I thought y'all were going back to back. I didn't realize together. So thank you for being here tonight. Next on the list, we have Joey Corning, and he will be speaking on financial literacy classes. Welcome, Mr. Corning.
Hello, my name is Joey Corning, and I'm a sophomore at Midland High School. I first want to thank the MIC School Board for giving me the opportunity to share my concerns with you. Don't worry, I'm not here as a 15-year-old expert telling you all things that you have to do better, but instead to ask you to help me and all the other MIC students to be better prepared for our future. The curriculum offered at MISD is diverse and offers many fields of study. However, I believe that there is one crucial course that all students need that is missing. Allow me to present you with the question. Do you know the percentage of high school graduates that lack the knowledge of basic life skills, more particularly the financial literacy skills needed when we leave this campus in our parents' homes? I've read many studies on this matter, but I first want to share a study of my own. I presented 10 high school graduates with these 5 questions to determine the skill level they possessed when they graduated. Question 1. When you graduated high school, did you know how to balance a checkbook? Question 2. When you graduated high school, did you know what a W-4 form was? Question 3. When you graduated high school, did you understand interest rates? For example, is 18% interest a good rate on a credit card? Question 4. When you graduated high school, did you know how to get car insurance by yourself and understand the policy limits you needed? Question 5. When you graduated from high school, did you know how to write a resume? Out of these 10 high school graduates ranging from valedictorians to ones who barely got by, there was only one question that any of them could answer yes to. That question was, when you graduated from high school, did you know how to write a resume? Based on their responses, I determined that while all of the students knew how to be successful in searching for a job, none of them knew how to manage the money that they would make. A recent survey by Everfy Inc. on high school students revealed that the state of financial literacy among the nation's youth is grim, as stated on their website. The survey showed that on average, students surveyed believe that a good credit score is about 500, and over 1/3 believe that a good credit score is 300 or less. 41% of those surveyed think that they are entitled to receive all payback taxes upon filing federal income tax return, or that they do not have to pay federal income taxes at all. Based on these numbers, I believe that a mandatory financial literacy class would greatly benefit all MIC students for when we graduate. I understand that some of these topics are covered in accounting and economics, but in my survey, I spoke with graduates who took those courses, and while the topic was touched on, none of them felt proficient in any of the areas. The argument has been made that high school students do not need this type of education because we've never had to handle with them more than just a few dollars, and the concept would just be too abstract. My response is that I believe that most high school students plan on having to handle more than a few dollars in their future. But if we're never taught what to do with it, how are we ever going to be able to keep it? So I ask you, please consider making a financial literacy course at Midland Lee a priority for graduation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corning. I'm a CPA, and I have a hard time getting through the new W-4 form myself, so I think it would be good for all of us. Next we have up to speak is Mr. Wimberly, and I believe he is the teacher and the coach on record for all of these fine debaters we've had tonight. And so his topic is UL District Contest. Thank you, Mr. Wimberly, for being here.
As always, President Murray, Dr. Ramsey, members of the board, thank you for having me. Pardon me, I just drove back from judging the 3A UIL district competition down in San Angelo and was rushing back to make sure that I got here in time. And yes, I will take responsibility for my team, along with my lovely bride, Mrs. Wimberly, our assistant coach. But to be fair, we had no idea what they were going to say. Our goal was only to get them up here and get them to be a part of what we're doing here. Our goal was to get them to be a part of the process and to make sure that our board knew that our students have a voice, they have something to say, and that they can say it really, really well. Honestly, guys, I'm just going to be up here and be proud for a second because I love my team. They're really, really awesome. Saying that, I have some exciting news about what's coming up this weekend. Our team will be competing at the UIL district competition for Lincoln Douglas debate, persuasive and informative extemporaneous speaking, poetry, and prose. Unfortunately, although we do have an academic coordinator who does an amazing job in Ms. Weber, and we have teachers that typically volunteer their time throughout the year, because of the stress of COVID this year and the inavailability of our students to participate on campus throughout the entire year, our academic team came up sorely lacking, meaning we didn't have any entries in mathematics, number sense, calculator, science, social studies, current events, journalism. None of those did we have a team to represent us. But because my team is more competitive than most, I can't imagine why, they have volunteered to fill those spots as best they can. We literally wrote it on the board and said, guys, these are the blanks that we have. The extemporaneous speakers will be taking the place of the journalism writers. Our valedictorian is going to be competing in mathematics and science. Other players will be taking place in number sense, as well as many other of the events. I don't know how we're going to do, guys, but Midland Lee will be represented on Saturday down in San Angelo. I will not allow us to come up short. But with that in mind, I would urge the board to consider something. The schools that we compete against in District 26A all offer a stipend for their academic coordinator. They all offer a stipend for their academic coaches per event that they offer. And one of the reasons that I feel like we came up short this year is that we do not. And those people do hard work all year long. Please, board members, I would urge you to consider that in your deliberations. Consider adding a stipend for those coaches that do that work. This should not be a volunteer position. This should be something that they are compensated for the hundreds of hours that they put in throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly, and as always, we totally are excited about the good work you continue to do at Lee and the team and the way they perform because they represent us well, so we appreciate all that y'all do. And Ms. Wimberly, you're recognized there too because I know you're a big part of that team. The next speaker will be Amanda Bay, and her topics tonight are Imagine Math and Imagine Math Facts. Ms. Bay, welcome.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Ramsey, President Murray, and MISD school member, board, and trustees. I was so excited to come here tonight, and then I heard those kids, and I got overwhelmed with pride for Midland. Awesome job, guys. That was amazing. My name is Amanda Day, but I'd answer to Bay or Faye or Hey. I currently teach 5th grade math here at Bowie Fine Arts Academy. I could not be happier to be part of the MISD family. I'm speaking tonight in representation of the Bowie Fine Arts Math Department. We wanted to first thank you for MISD's continued investment and support of Imagine Learning's Imagine Math and Imagine Math Facts instructional technology-based programs, as well as inform you of some huge progress that we've seen at Bowie in both student growth and achievement using these programs. Imagine Math pathways are individualized, differentiated, to meet each student's needs and meet them where they are academically. Additionally, 3rd through 6th grade Bowie students are working to boost their math fact fluency foundation by working through Imagine Math Facts program to achieve ninja mode mastery in addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Both Imagine Math programs played a vital role in supporting student learning in spring of 2020. Additionally, they helped us at the beginning of this academic year as we transitioned from virtual, distant to in-person learning. As educators, we appreciate your continued investment in MISD students, teachers, and administrators. While we understand that Imagine Math may not be everyone's favorite, as it's very rigorous and challenges students to maximize their individual potential, when implemented with fidelity and accountability, Imagine Math is growing our kids, and MISD kids deserve it. Thank you. Proud to serve MISD. Amanda Day.
President Murray, can I say something real quick? This will be the first time in public forum, I believe, in the history that I've been here for 4 years and plus. But I just want the teacher and our students to know that as I sit up here, we got rules that for the public forum. So if you don't see me jumping up and down for you, it's because of the rules that exist. And the debate team should eventually find that out. But I just want you to know that, like I said, this is the first time I've spoken in public forum, but to know that I'm supporting people. I'm just, by the rules of engagement here, I just can't jump up and down during public forum. But I just want you to know that. So, like I said, I've broken the rule after 4.5 years, or 4 years and some months, but I want everybody to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez, and Ms. Day, I apologize. I went from a capital letter to a lowercase letter, and I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, I appreciate you, and it is Amanda Day, and thank you for being here tonight. The next 14 speakers we have are all on mask mandate, and that covers discussion item 4, action items tonight. So, board, we'll ask you to pay special attention to these speakers as they come forward. If you need to ask a question or a fact, you may address them because they are speaking about a action item tonight. And so with that, we will call on Lori Bowen first. And I'm pretty sure I got that right. Ms. Bowen, thank you for being here.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here tonight and for listening to my comments. I am Lori Bowen. I am the nurse over at Midland Freshman High School, and I serve there very proudly. I've been a nurse in our district for the last 8 years. What I want to bring to you tonight is just some data that I collected during our 14 weeks during the fall semester when we had a good bit of COVID business going on. So I've taken that data and I've looked at it. I have an observation or two about those. I also have a report that I want to share with you, and then I have some closing statements for you. So regarding the data that I collected, and this is specifically for Midland freshmen, and it represents Midland freshmen only, I looked at multiple things, but the two things that stood out to me that impacted me the most was when I looked at the students who were exposed in the school setting versus students who were exposed outside the school setting. I compared the numbers and found that less than 1% of the students who were exposed in the school setting actually developed a COVID infection during their quarantine time versus the students who were exposed outside of our school setting. 18.5% of those developed a COVID infection during their quarantine time. So what does that tell me? That plainly tells me that what we do here in Midland ISD, the mitigation efforts that we have set up from the beginning of the school year have worked. I move now into the report that I want to share with you, and this was in the morbidity and mortality weekly report. It was something that was published late January. It is a doctor, Dr. Falk, in Wood County, Wisconsin. In her school district, she's a pediatrician there, and she and her associates studied all the COVID cases that were in their 17 schools, approximately 5,000 students. What she found was that only 7 of those 191 positive COVID cases were related to an on-campus exposure. So her conclusions were the same as mine, that the mitigation efforts that they employed are the same as ours, and they worked. So my closing comments are this. Thank you for what you've already employed as far as mitigation efforts, which is washing our hands, watching our distance, wearing a mask. And I encourage you to continue to do that for as long as we possibly can until we get to the point where we no longer have to do that. So thank you for your time this evening.
Ms. Bowen, thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of the MISD team. There's no words to say how much we thank you for all that you've been through this last year dealing with the COVID. The next speaker I have for tonight is David Cannon. Mr. Cannon, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Had a long walk all the way back up here. Good evening, Board President Murray, trustees, Superintendent Dr. Ramsey. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. As a parent of 3 MISD enrolled students, I would like to announce my support for continuing the mask policies at all campuses within the district until the end of the current school year. I am aware that local confirmed cases, hospitalizations, and mortality have all dropped precipitously. This is outstanding news. However, the source of this reduction in viral transmission is most likely associated with masking and social distancing policies in place now. Currently, we are working to vaccinate our public. As of March 19th, Midland County has a 22% first dose vaccination rate and 11% full 2-dose vaccination rate. These figures are from the CDC and County Health Department. While we continue this effort, please remember that vaccinations are not available for those under the age of 16. Both Moderna and Pfizer have completed enrollment for studies of children ages 12 and older and expect release of data over the early summer. Both companies have publicly stated that trials in younger children have yet to start and project vaccination to be available by spring of 2022, or in their words, maybe a bit sooner. With the potential of vaccines being available for older children before the next school year and a growing vaccination rate among adults within Midland County, what is the harm in remaining diligent in observing mask and distancing protocols for a little while longer? We only have 48 days remaining in our school year. The district has done an admirable job adhering to the policies that benefit all. Let's continue that effort so we can feel more confident that the 2021-2022 school year could be met with uncovered, smiling faces. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. The next speaker will be Allison Brown. Mrs. Brown, thank you for coming tonight.
Dr. Ramsey, President Murray, and Board, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm coming before you tonight as a teacher of MISD and as a parent of 4 children who are MISD students. I am a second grade teacher, which means that we have been in school longer than anybody else, wearing masks. And let me just tell you, nobody loves it, but everyone is used to it. It is our routine. This year has been crazy. In fact, a lot of us call this the year of 47 first days of school, because we have had 47 first days of school. We had virtual first days, in-person first days, new kid first days, all of these things. And it has been crazy and confusing, and it already has been that way enough without changing a useful and helpful routine. My 7- and 8-year-olds know every moment of the day they wear their masks. In fact, I have one of them right over there, and she knows that she wears her mask at school, and she does a great job of it because it is expected. Some parents, if we change the mask mandate, some parents will say, you still have to wear a mask. And so we'll have some students at school with masks on and some without, and that will create more chaos, especially for our younger ones who are used to routine. And so I want to encourage you to continue to keep the mask mandate. Also, I think it's interesting that we're even opening it up because in general, we don't allow parents to have a say in public health issues. If you have a fever, you're not allowed to come to school. Sorry, that's just the rules. You can't be infectious and come to school. But with COVID, there are not necessarily symptoms. So the only way to keep the spread down that we are aware of at this point is to social distance, wash our hands, and wear masks. And so we have done that. And because we have done that, we have had great success in convincing our parents of the children who hadn't been at school to come to school. In fact, my campus, I believe, has 5 students online, and that's it. Which is amazing because, as you know, our students learn better in person. They do better, they engage better in person. We can challenge them more. We can find their gaps and fill their gaps so much easier when we are in person. But I guarantee you that those parents who we got convinced 2-3 weeks ago to come back to school, they will go home. Their children will go home and they will lose learning again. And as a parent, I won't blame them. Because if we remove the mask mandates, I will have serious discussions with my own children who cannot be vaccinated about whether they feel safe attending online in person. My children thrive in school and they do well. But I will seriously consider allowing them to come home if the mask mandate is removed because their mental health and safety is also a priority for me. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, and thank you for being a teacher at MISD and sharing with our students. The next speaker we have tonight is Donna Taylor. Welcome, Mrs. Taylor.
Good evening. I am Donna Taylor, the school nurse at Santa Rita Elementary. I have been a registered nurse for 40 years, a school nurse for 22, an MISD employee for 9. I am certified in school nursing and in public health. I am here to plead with you to leave our current mask mandate in place at least until the end of this school year. We at Santa Rita worked very hard to keep COVID out of our school this year, and all of our efforts paid off. Only 6 staff members and 10 students contracted COVID. That's 2% of our campus population. Last year, we had 60 cases of flu. This year, only 5, down 92%. Last year, we had 112 cases of strep. This year, 32, down 72%. We quarantined 6 staff and 149 students. Santa Rita is one of the safest public places to be in Midland. Scientists have learned a lot about COVID since this time last year. We now know COVID-19 spreads primarily through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks in close proximity to other people. When the pandemic first began, it was thought everybody needed N95 masks, that cloth masks were useless. That assumption was wrong. A study published last month by the CDC shows if 2 people are together in close proximity and both are wearing a cloth mask over a simple medical mask, this reduces transfer of COVID by 98%. According to Robert Bollinger, infectious disease physician who teaches Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, many underdeveloped countries lack the sophisticated medical care, equipment, treatments, and medicines we have here in the U.S. Yet our death rate per 100,000 people is 150 times higher than theirs. Why? Because all their citizens wear masks, like their lives depend on it, because that's the only weapon they have. You school board members have been entrusted with this decision, which will impact the lives of all MISD staff and students. Masks save lives. We must not get complacent with the 3 W's. Wash our hands, wear our masks, and watch our distance. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor.
I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
In your history of being a nurse, is this the first time that you can remember that we had strep throat that low in the elementary?
I'm positive it's the lowest I've ever seen it in 22 years.
Thank you. I've heard other statistics like that, and you know, and people like to wash over them like it's nothing, but you know, the mask has really reduced some of the other stuff that goes on with the children, and it's been, I think, a learning thing for society to know that you know, there's transmittal when kids are that close, and to hear that number, you know, our concrete number, it's I really appreciate you sharing that with our public, because I don't think everybody quite knows that information, and so it'd be great to hear any more statistics like that from any other campuses that could be put together and shared with the public.
I hope that you've signed up to speak, but let's just hold remarks down from the crowd at this time, if you will. Thank you. Ms. Taylor, thank you for being here tonight and speaking. I have a good little friend that's a 3rd grader, Lola Luna, at Santa Rita, and I know she appreciates the work you do. Thank you. The next speaker will be Chris Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for being here tonight.
How's it going? I want to first and foremost say that Jesus Christ is Lord, and he's the name above all names, and every knee shall bow if you like it or not. When's enough? How many masks we want to wear here? 10, 20, the whole box? What's next, y'all? A vaccine that's not even proven, hasn't had clinical studies long term? What's next, right? This man over here, this attorney from MISD harassed me at the door, me and my son. Is it because I'm a Hispanic minority? Or what's going on here? What do you want us to do, sir? Wear a star now? Because we don't want to wear a mask? You told me to stay away over here, away from everybody else. I'm not a leper. I'm not sick. I've never been sick. I got a report too. I've done a report. Me and my whole family have never worn a mask one time. The greatest president in the world, Donald Trump, invited me to the White House, and I went to Washington, D.C., Dallas, Houston. I've been all across the nation, right, with no mask, ever. I refuse to wear one. Amen? And I never got the Rona. None of my family has got coronavirus. Here's my report, right? You want to hear my report? Because I guess you can just give reports with no kind of proof whatsoever. But here's my report. It's the truth, so help me God. Every person that I know, they got coronavirus. First of all, they survived. Second of all, they all wore a mask, a face diaper, breathing their hot breath all day. I've never worn a mask in my life, and I've never been sick. Neither have you, son? Have you been sick? See? So we never worn a mask. We never been sick. Yet you got COVID Karens, a mask police harassing you. Like I said, the attorney here for MISD harassing me and a bunch of patriots telling us we have to leave once we speak. I'm not a leper. I'm not sick. So again, what's next? And when's enough? Last time I checked, this is a free country. Last time I checked, this is America. And you know what? My religious beliefs, why are they not accepted, right? I guess if I was BLM or LGBT, right, or a pro-masker, I guess everybody would love me a lot more. But since I'm a Hispanic minority with the Trump hat and the Jesus shirt, right, I get treated like so wickedly at the door. Basically, looking like the police want to arrest me for not wearing a mask. But thank God the governor had enough of this stuff and got rid of the mandate, which I think MISD needs to also. Because I'm going to tell you something. Your safety and your well-being is your responsibility, not mine. And newsflash, everybody, one day we're all going to die. The Bible says we were promised death. So what you need to do is get right with God. Give me the verse, son. This is my point. Where's my religious freedom? Where's my civil rights? They've been violated. I'm a minority, right? I'm a victim. I've been racially profiled. I've been discriminated by this gentleman and that lady in the front, right? I've been discriminated and given death threats by local racist BLM groups, LGBT community, pro-maskers, and vaccine queens, I call them. My body, my choice. I'm not taking a needle. I'm not wearing a mask over my dead body. I want to leave this with this verse. This is why I get my religious exemption from the Lord Jesus Christ. Matthew 10:28. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. I fear God. I don't fear the China flu with the 99% survival rate. No mask, no vax, don't ask.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Our next speaker will be Amy Wilson. Ms. Wilson. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a mother to 7 children with students at Lee High School, YWLA, but this year I opted to homeschool my 5 youngest children, 4 that would attend Bonham Elementary, primarily because I did not want them to wear a mask all day. Kids need to see and recognize human facial expressions to understand emotional states of their peers. It tells them how other people feel about their actions. It helps them learn how to respond. They are integral cues in how we associate with each other. Facial expressions teach. Faces help us build empathy. If you can see the whole face, or if you can't see the whole face, you miss the subtle or the not so subtle cues. Elementary and junior high especially, and high school ages need it on these levels. They also need to be seen. Too many kids are using this mask as a shield to the world and to society. They are hiding because they have been told to hide. You cannot teach a dog not to bite if it always wears a muzzle because it never had a choice. The longer they are behind the masks, the longer they are being muzzled, and their emotional and mental health is being stunted. I have a child who is 13 who has never been more anxious in her life than she has during this last school year. And she does wear that mask like it is a shield guarding her from the world. But it's not making her anxiety better. It has made her anxiety worse. Think about when you are speaking or listening to someone, and then there's someone else that gets in between you, and you can no longer see them. What is your natural instinct? It is to move to make eye contact with that person to whom you were speaking. It's a natural reaction. We want to see faces of those that we engage with. Now imagine how hard it is for students, and probably teachers, to actively engage with one another when half of their face, at a minimum, is blocked. And if you've ever seen some of these kids with their hairs over their eyeballs, so their entire face is literally covered. It's easier to ignore someone when they can't see your face, and vice versa. The science reported in several studies, including the one on the CDC's website, said there's only a 1.9% difference between masking and not masking when it comes to COVID-19. If you want to justify your decisions out of an abundance of caution, then you should always err on the side of what is best for the children, their development, their mental health, and not out of fear. Fear should never be the motivation behind any decision. So whether you end the mask mandate this year, but please heaven help me end it this next year, because I would really like to send my other kids back to school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you for being here tonight. The next speaker we will call to the microphone is Wendy Holland. Ms. Holland, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for allowing us to participate tonight. I want to talk about some startling statistics I just learned recently. I'm just going to capture just a few of them, and I'm sorry that you can barely see me, but I'm a little one. The rate of suicidal ideation, that of the idea of suicide, has increased dramatically. It just has come to my attention this last week, and so I wanted to pass on some of these numbers. It's jumped 25% for people 18 to 24. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 10 to 24. Of 12,827 youths that completed a suicide risk screening, this is the breakdown. 59% are female. The mean age, 14.5 years. 48% Hispanic Latina. 27% non-Hispanic white. 19% Hispanic black or black. This group was compared the same numbers during the same period of time, January through July of 2020 over 2019. In Arizona, ages 12 through 17, suicide is up 67%, with 24% increase in ER visits for mental health reasons for children ages 5 through 11. 31% in ER visits for mental health ages 12 through 17. I did look at the Texas, or the Education Agency and their mission. It is to improve outcomes for all public school students in the state by providing leadership, guidance, and support to school systems. Their roles and responsibilities are funding to public schools, curriculum, data collection, and admin functions. MISD School Board, selecting superintendent of schools, approving personnel, adopting district goals, reviewing and acting on policies, adopting annual budgets, and setting tax rates. Nowhere is it indicated that these entities are grantors of liberty and freedoms to our children. Never mind one's outlook on the validity of masks, our children of all ages deserve to grow, live, learn, and breathe as they were designed to live by our Creator. I would pose we should be instilling liberty into these hearts instead of continued fear. You must vote on the side of liberty of parents and children to decide what is best for them, as each of us are sovereign beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Holland. Our next speaker will be Angelica Villa. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I just want to address you guys. I know that there was some data that was brought up here, but this is not a comparison between Wisconsin and Texas. If it is, those numbers are completely different. My kid actually attends Santa Rita, and I do believe that their cleaning protocols have been tremendously improved. I don't think the masks are what is helping that school. I pick up my kid every day, and I see kids inappropriately wearing them, sharing them. Teachers have been putting them on their masks, taking them off. My son has one that he wears every day, and it's dirty every single day because he takes it off outside and puts it back on. He also is a kid who gets strep and flu. I mean, do we honestly believe that flu has disappeared? I don't think it's because of the masks. I think it's our right as parents to have our kids do what we want them to do. And that shouldn't be taken away from us. If it's personal, we had another person who came up here and talked about how their kid gets vaccinated and doesn't get vaccinated. That's a personal choice that she has made for her kids. My personal choice for my kids is for them not to wear masks. We have never worn a mask in Midland County, and nobody has ever confronted us. If we're going to compare numbers, let's compare to Greenwood. They've lifted it. You know, it's also our governor has said that it shouldn't be allowed anymore. I mean, he lifted the mandate. Why are we not following that? I don't care if there's a week left of school, 2 weeks left of school. Masks should not be mandatory on our students. And if at the very minimum, board, I'm asking you, make it to where it's 10 years old and up, because the ones younger are not properly wearing them. All it is dividing them. My son hasn't had lunch with his friends. He has to have it in his room. This is just getting out of hand. If we want to continue to get better in Midland and move on from COVID like the rest of the world, then we've got to lift this mask mandate that's on MISD. Again, this is not a comparison between other states because those numbers, we don't even know if those are real numbers that they stated. I already found one inconsistency with some of the data that another speaker brought up here. So I ask for you guys to lift it, make it our choice for our kids. I tell my kids what they can and can't eat. I tell them what they can and cannot wear. And this is our right as Americans, that we should tell our kids what they can and can't do. And these masks are not helping. We do not know if it's the mask that's helping or if it's the cleaning techniques. I think flu all of a sudden is non-existent. I haven't seen any kids getting sick from strep, but I don't think it's because of the mask. They've been proven not to be preventful for COVID-19. So I think it's the cleaning, and I think that should have been done long time ago, and we probably would have saw flu and strep and all those nasty things go down, but it's not the mask. Please give us our right back as parents to make decisions for our kids. Thank you.
Ms. Villa.
Mr. Murray, I have a clarifying question for Mr. Pounds to answer because we've had it a couple of times. Will you explain specifically what the governor's mask mandate lift was? Because I know there were dispensations to TEA and some other things, just so we all kind of are on the same page as we move forward. I'm not taking a side one way or the other. I know that there is a deeper issue there.
Right. So the governor's order that was issued on March 2nd, it eliminated the statewide mask mandate. It did not eliminate the school district's ability to have a policy requiring masks. And so if you look at the actual order, it actually provides in Section 6 that school districts, public school districts across the state can follow TEA guidance. And TEA updated its guidance in response to the order, saying that all school districts shall require masks or continue to follow their policy unless the school board takes formal action to eliminate or modify those requirements.
So every school district in the state of Texas has to address this one way or the other. Either you do nothing and leave whatever policy you have in place, whether it's mask or no mask, because the governor is essentially saying it's up to each individual taxing entity to decide for their community.
Correct. And I will also mention that the governor's order also still includes a recommendation for all individuals to wear a mask when social distancing isn't feasible. That's included in the language of the order as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Villa, for being here tonight. Our next speaker will be Shandy Williams. Ms. Williams, thank you for being with us tonight and sharing with us.
Thank you. I just want to bring up a couple of things right now. I'm confining to exactly what y'all want. You have a mask. This mask, numerous of your students have it and wear it in class. How do I know? I bought and paid for it for all of them. It's cheesecloth. It does absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. This got me on the flight to Southwest. Also, a simple piece of paper saying that I am medically exempt from wearing a mask is all that I have to have. But guess what? I never have to show it to you, ever. Let's get to the things that we came here to discuss today. I want to address some things. If you're not going to go off of what CDC recommends and Dr. Fauci, who are in control of all this, then why are we even discussing this? The recommendation is for 2 masks. And by the way, are you aware social distancing is 3 feet, not 6? The inconsistencies are what we cannot stand with anymore. To the teacher at MISD. MISD is the last one to open back up. Let's talk about the people. Everyone in the MISD bubble, hold on. You're about to get windstormed. Midland Christian, Midland Classical Academy, as well as Trinity, all opened up on time. Midland Christian made their stance. They were not going to require masks from their staff nor their students. Guess who wore masks? 0. Absolutely none. Guess what else took place? They got quarantined on their sports groups because they had been in contact with another team that had COVID. Guess how many of those students actually had COVID? 0, not one of them. Donna at Santa Rita, stay in your lane. N95 mask must have
Ms.
fit
Williams,
testing.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Please stop my time.
You need to make all your comments toward the board, not toward anyone that's spoken, if you will.
I'm disagreeing with what's been said, and you need to know who said those things. N95 masks have to have a fit testing. If you do not have a fit test, you cannot wear one. I've been doing this for a very long time. OSHA standards have been doing this a lot longer than 20 years. You should really look at the research on that. And if nothing's going to pass, our children are wearing one mask. Remember, Fauci said 2. What about the lifestyle changes? My family eats healthy and has an immunity. Was that taken during the statistics of this? No, it was not. Wisconsin is not the same as Texas. The atmosphere there is completely different. Therefore, it invalidates that argument completely. The vaccine and social distancing will never create herd immunity per the CDC 2020 of September. But now all of a sudden we're going to have it with vaccine? Let's think again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not idiots. We're not going to be befuddled. I'm a second generation MISD. Stop right there. I'm a second generation Lee High School graduate. Nobody knows who MISD is, but they all know who Lee is. We are the school of Friday Night Lights. We build strong leaders and a bond with a city that can never be broken. I find myself here raising a third generation group of Midlanders with a failing school which has had poor leadership, and that is changing thanks to new incomers coming in. Private school was our only option. I pay taxes on private school, yet my children still, I pay my taxes, yet my children have to go to private school. I have a say-so. My children are out there playing with your MISD students every single day. They do not wear a mask at school. They travel throughout the state of Texas with me as I've opened my 4th company in Port Aransas. Not one time have they contracted COVID, and not one time has our family ever worn a mask. My immunity, my health is in my family's hands. It is between us as a unit, not yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next speaker will be Mandy Meadows. Ms. Meadows, welcome to the podium.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak this evening. My name is Mandy Meadows. My husband and I have 2 boys in Midland ISD, a kindergartner and a 4th grader. I'm a registered nurse and an active member in the PTA of both my boys' schools. I'm here to speak out against masking our children. I believe 100% that it should be the parent's choice. Several studies have shown that children do not readily acquire COVID, spread it to other children or teachers, or endanger parents or others at home. In rare cases where a child contracts COVID, it's very unusual for a child to get severely ill and die. Evidence shows that masks can impede breathing, which can trigger anxiety attacks. Scientific evidence also suggests that masks are ineffective in reducing transmission. Another interesting fact is that masks are only functional when they're dry. When masks are saturated with moisture from breath, they pass droplets. And my kindergartner's mask is gross. Health issues that come from wearing masks, anxiety, depression, oxygen deficiency from rebreathing exhaled air, headaches, drowsiness, reduced ability to concentrate, reduction in cognitive function, altered immune system. I understand that teachers may feel unmasking children may be threatening to them. From a personal experience, I can say that this is an unfounded fear. I've served at my church in the kindergarten for several years, and I have served without a mask the past year and have not gotten sick. Studies show that teachers are at a very low risk of severe illness or death, and the school setting is one of the safest, lowest risk environments.
So far, there have been at least 62 independent school districts and 7 private schools in Texas that have chosen to give parents the choice whether to mask their children or not. That's 168,104 students and almost 21,000 teachers and staff. Furthermore, the students and parents have legal rights. You spoke of the TEA code, but there is also Section 37.00323 that prohibits the impairment of students' breathing or inhibits the student's ability to communicate. This includes wearing a mask. Speaking with my own children and several of their friends, they're just tired of it. They have done what was asked of them for the school year, and now they're ready for their freedom. They're ready to see their friends and teachers' smiling faces. They're ready to not have to wear a mask 8 hours of the day. They're ready to not have to have the distraction of something on their face all day or the bother of headaches and fatigue. Please give parents the choice to and unmask our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Meadows. Our next speaker will be Susan Couch. Mrs. Couch, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Board. Now, I can get up in front of a class of students all day long and never lose my composure, but tonight may be a little different. I am an MISD teacher as well as an MISD parent. I've taught here in MISD for 26 years. I've devoted my entire career to this district. 18 of the 26 years have been at Bonham Elementary. I am a proud Tiger. I have seen the pendulum swing in many different directions during this career. I have witnessed many changes across the district during this time, some for the good, and some sadly were not for the best for the district, nor for the students. I am not opposed to change, as that is the way of life. I am here today to ask you to consider releasing or at least changing the required mask mandate and making it a choice, especially for our students. As a teacher, we need to be able to communicate with our students. Many students are soft-spoken, such as Ms. Wilson's that I've taught personally. The mask makes it almost impossible to hear some of those students and what they are saying. When we are trying to get clarification on what they've said to make sure they have personal understanding of the topic at hand, they often negate to answer again, or they refuse to repeat themselves. This only causes their anxiety to become more, and they become more reluctant to speak out again for fear that you will not hear them and understand them. Then, we as educators miss out on a valuable chance to either reaffirm their knowledge or to correct their misunderstandings. That harms a student's learning, and isn't that why we are teachers, is to help their learning, not harm it. I watched the interchange today between the second and first grade PE at my school for a whole 5 minutes during my lunch break. I saw kids take their masks off to wipe their sweat, wipe their nose, and one spit in his mask. One told his teacher he lost it in the bathroom. Did he need to go find it? Another one dropped it in the trash can, washing her hands, took it out, and promptly put it straight back on her little face. As a parent, I don't think parents always understand that this is what's going on. As a teacher, I was unaware of that until today when I watched an interchange of a lower grade. I do not deal with those issues to that degree with my 6th graders. However, I do spend 5 to 10 minutes a day telling them to cover their nose, cover their mouth, put it back on, wear it correctly. 5 to 10 minutes a day times 5 becomes 25 to 50 minutes a week. That is half my class. I only have my kids for an hour and 25 minutes. By the end of the week, I have lost a half of one class period instructing my students to wear their masks correctly. You have a okay. Cases are on the decline in Midland County, and I looked at the MISD dashboard last night. For the month of March, There have only been 8 reported cases within MISD.
Thank you, Mrs. Couch, for not only speaking tonight, but also for being a teacher at Bonham and spending your career with MISD. We appreciate you. The next speaker we have is Miss Ashton. Miss Ashton, thank you for being here and bringing your 2 lovely students.
Hello. My name is Kiora Ashton, and I have 4 children, 2 children in MISD and 1 in pre-K at Heritage. I would like the board to take action today and vote parent-staff choice for masks in public schools and to allow visitors back on campuses to help staff out. I've volunteered extensively for PTA and know how badly extra help is needed on these campuses. Statistics at this point have proven the virus is not deadly for the majority, which we have to make rules for the majority, not the exceptions of children. If we continue masks 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, especially while they are forced to run in PE with mouths and noses restricted, it should never happen. We are destroying their natural immune systems and making them suffer. They will do it because they are told to. If they pull their mask down, they are told pull it back up. They're like, I just want to breathe. Masks are not being used properly either, and numbers are down anyway. Students play games swapping masks to see if anyone notices. Students leave high school campuses piled into cars together without masks. Students participate in extracurricular activities without masks, and numbers are down anyway. Other schools in this area have had a freedom of choice this whole time, and numbers are down anyway. More and more schools around us are choosing freedom of choice, and numbers are down anyway. Requiring it for those that don't want to is unnecessary. Kids have very low risk and aren't seen to spread it. Lastly, these kids have lost some of their decision-making over the last year. I think it would be nice if they got to choose whether they felt like wearing a mask or not. They cannot see their teachers' faces. They cannot hear or understand properly. I can't tell you how many times they come home and say, I couldn't understand. Reading scores in lower grade levels are suffering. Kids need to see facial expressions to learn. Let our children breathe real air and see actual faces. We cannot only consider their physical health, we must also consider their mental and emotional health. Please allow parents and staff to make these decisions today. It should never have been mandated, ever. Stop keeping kids and staff in limbo and give them back their rights. Thank you.
Oh, is this Georgia Ashton?
That's Shelby.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Hi, Shelby. And she will also speak on masks in school.
Hi, my name is Shelby Ashton. I'm a 2nd grader at Carver. I want to say, please let us have the choice to not wear a mask and do what we think is best for us. I want to let anyone that wants to not wear a mask do what they think is best for them. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Wimberly, I hope you heard that because she sounds like a future debater for Lee High School. The last speaker we have tonight is Georgia Ashton. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Georgia Ashton, and I'm a 4th grader at Carver. I came here to speak because kids should not have to wear a mask at school. Schools are proven not to be super spreaders of COVID, even the private schools that do not make you wear a mask. It is not fair that we have to pay money to go to a private school that gives you a simple, easy choice that should be given in public schools as in other public places. I have a few major problems with masks. First off, when I breathe in and out wearing a mask, my glasses fog up often, making it hard to do my schoolwork. Second, During physical education, we have to wear a mask while doing activities that make you run a lot, which also causes major sweat and skin irritation issues. Thirdly, when we are coming in on a particularly hot day from recess, we have to wear masks and sweat in them in a long line with other kids from our grade until we can come in. Wearing a mask makes it majorly hard to do school in person. We students have been made to do and change so much since last spring. We lost so much, including the right to make our choices for what is best for each of us individually. Please give us this choice back so we can decide what is best for us instead of being told what is best instead. Thank you for listening.
There we go. Georgia, thank you so much for speaking. That is a great job. That concludes our speakers and the agenda item. Number 4, discussion action item. A, COVID-19 mask requirements for MISD. Mr. Pounds, you're the presenter, so I'll turn the stage over to you.
Yeah, I think I answered the main question before, providing the context where we're making this decision in, but we are going to have a presentation from our Director of Health Services to give you a little more detail on some statistics and what the district administration's recommendation is for you guys. So,
one more legal one before, Jean.
Sure.
So we kind of know how we are where we are now. How did we get to the mask mandate educationally? That was the governor's mandate, right?
Correct.
Similarly. So why did it not, if he mandated masks, if the highest elected official in our state mandated masks, and we all went, all Texans went to that, when he lifted the mask mandate, why the stipulations that weren't there? You understand? Like, it feels like going one way, it was a certain messaging, and then coming back the other way, maybe it wasn't the same.
Well, I think one way to look at it is he is the leader of Texas, and so TEA followed that guidance when he made that first step to have a statewide mask requirement. Now just like any private company could have always required masks, and so I think the fact that there are still cases out there and it's still pending, that everyone can make their decision for themselves, and that's why you put that.
You're about to tell me, aren't you?
Good evening, President Murray, Dr. Ramsey, and Board of Trustees. We're ready, Mike. My name is Imogene Douglas. I'm the Director of Health Services for Midland ISD, and I'd like to give a little bit of preface to answer the question you just asked, Mr. Trischetti. So when the governor declared that the state would no longer require masks, as our attorney has mentioned, TEA guidance says schools must require masks for certain student populations unless the Board of Trustees decides to change that. It also gives districts the latitude to make the determination for masking for students of different ages. So hopefully that answers that question. To give a little bit of background, CDC essential elements of safe K-12 school in-person instruction include several mitigation measures. And the CDC says specifically, regardless of community transmission levels right now, the 2 priority mitigation measures which help stop the spread of COVID-19 and the consequential absences and school closures that we've seen in other places that don't have good mitigation are universal and correct use of masks and physical distancing. So with physical distancing, we have some of those pieces in place. It is difficult to do that in certain school areas. Universal masking is one of the biggest protectors we can provide for our students. Masking doesn't eliminate the risk of COVID-19. It does help prevent transmission from the source patient, the person who is positive with COVID-19, and it also helps provide protection for the wearer of the mask. So when someone coughs, most of those droplets that Nurse Taylor mentioned are captured by the mask. Those droplets are primarily what carry the infection to other people. If I'm standing here and cough on Dr. Goodnow and I don't have my mask on, my droplets carry further. She has her mask on, so it provides some protection. If I have my mask on and Dr. Goodnow has her mask on, we have a double filtration system, if you will. We don't make these recommendations without consulting with our local health authorities, and we have spoken with Dr. Larry Wilson, who is the Vice President of Medical Affairs at Midland Memorial, and he is also the Director for the Midland Health Department. We also consulted with Dr. Miguel Walbert, who is a pediatric specialist here in town, who acts as our medical advisor. Both of these physicians in town have highly, highly recommended that MISD not make any changes to our current mask protocol. There are several reasons for that. We have not reached the point of critical mass for vaccinations in our population yet. While we have vaccination rates higher than a lot of Texas, we are not at the point where we have widespread protection.
Just about to ask that.
I don't know what the actual number for critical mass is for our area, but I can tell you that they look around and look at general recommendations, and when we get to about 30% or 40% of vaccination rates, coupled with some natural immunity that's in the area, that's when we are looking more towards some type of protection. And that's a projection all on its own. And that's not a guarantee.
Given you any indication as to when that vaccine threshold timeline would be met?
We don't know when that threshold timeline will be met, and there are a couple of factors to consider with that. Because we have higher than average vaccine availability here in Midland, Texas, does not mean that that exists in other areas of Texas. And while we work to make decisions that are best for our district and our community, we have to think about the impact of transmission from areas that have lower vaccine rates. We know that all 5 variants are present here in Texas, and the vaccines provide some protection for that. But that is one of the reasons that our medical advisors have strongly, strongly suggested that we keep the mask protocol in place just as it is for the remainder of the school year.
I just want to ask one other, since we're on the focus of vaccine. I understand, I sent you a bunch of questions about the number of vaccines that have been administered to specifically MISD employees, and I understand because of HIPAA we can't know exactly.
Sure.
But I do understand that CDC has changed the rules so that if you've been vaccinated and exposed, you no longer have to quarantine. And so when we first came into in-person learning, so much of the struggle was exposure, especially for staff. And one of the questions I have is if a staff member is vaccinated and they don't want to wear a mask, what would be the reasoning behind not allowing a grown adult who's been vaccinated, who will no longer have to quarantine should they be exposed, to unmask?
Sure, that's an excellent question. Thank you for that. While the vaccines provide us the best protection that we have in place in existence right now, they are not foolproof. And there are some variants that are not as responsive to the vaccine as the original strain was. So there's still some risk with that, with our current transmission levels in the community.
They would understand. As a mask, I mean, this is our best option, right?
Sure.
If you're vaccinated, and we are fortunate to have that readily available for all of our staff, it starts to become a quandary for me, is just personal preference as an adult, you know. And I understand what you're saying, they may not be fully protected, but if they understand that and accept those risk factors, what would be our reasoning in not allowing that?
So, an excellent question again. There is not just a risk to me if I happen to have COVID. And we know that vaccines aren't 100% effective. We don't have anything that's 100% effective, which is why we layer our mitigation. So on the question of me choosing not to wear a mask, it is not just me that I'm putting at risk. If I choose not to wear a mask and happen to have COVID, and we know that a lot of our active cases are asymptomatic, people never know they have it, and they are highly communicable. If I happen to have COVID, don't wear my mask, then I've not put myself at risk necessarily. I've put my children at risk, my colleagues, anyone that I come into contact with.
That a vaccinated person is, I think that there is new data out that vaccinated people, they're discovering, are not transmitting the disease. So to me, and I'm just trying to understand
Sure.
it, I'm not a nurse.
Sure.
It would make sense that if you've been vaccinated, you are indeed actually not affecting a choice for somebody else, because if it's not transmissible, then you can't give it to somebody else. Is that incorrect information?
So that would be true if the vaccine were 100% effective.
But we're talking about 5% for Pfizer, right?
5% for Pfizer. There is emerging data that suggests that people who get the vaccine, if they get exposed to COVID, that they would not be transmitters to other people. We don't have a lot of longitudinal data about that right now. And with our high numbers in the community, the risk for that is still pretty high.
Our positivity rate has come down to almost 4% community-wide, right?
Yes, our positivity rate has come down.
So I'm just trying to understand how that's considered high risk.
Sure. So the CDC has put out some stratified risk recommendations nationally, and it's based on cases per 100,000. And according to the Midland Health Department, this most recent week we had 61 cases for the county of Midland, which is approximately 176,000 people. So that puts us in the moderate transmission, which is the yellow zone. There's blue, which is low risk, yellow, which is moderate, orange, which is substantial, and red, which is high. Last week we were in the substantial transmission zone. This week we're in the moderate transmission zone. Now the CDC mitigation measures change slightly when you get into the low transmission zone because of the contagiousness and because of the impact of this disease. While children do not tend to have as severe outcome as adults, we are starting to see some longer term effects in children that we didn't even know had COVID. So we're watching that trend. And did I answer your question? Okay, excellent. So the CDC operational strategy for K through 12 schools through phased mitigation, you have that link there, and it provides that stratified risk for that. Ready for the next one, Mike? One concern that we hear frequently is that masks are not healthy for children, that they decrease oxygen levels, and that they provide health risks. The American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended universal masking for all children ages 2 and older. And they say with rare exceptions, even for our students who have health conditions, it is a rare exception that a student cannot safely wear a mask. I'm grateful that we have in place some modifications for students and some options for families whose children do have medical risks that prevent them from safely wearing a mask. Yep. So this graph shows you MISD COVID-19 cases. Some things to note with this are in November we had high numbers of staff and students. Our universal mask mandate did not go into place until November, and those numbers are reflective of exposure that happened in the first 2 weeks of November or the last 2 weeks of December, because there's about a 2-week delay.
Can I interrupt real quick?
I'm sorry?
I thought that the mask mandate, I mean, ever since we entered MISD, my daughter's been required to wear a mask.
Yes.
So I'm just confused how that we're saying that the mask mandate went into effect in November when we started school back in September in person.
Thank you for that clarification. November 2nd was when we expanded that mask mandate to include students of all ages. From the beginning of the school year, our students aged 10 or in 3rd grade and up have been in masks along with our staff because of the governor's mandate and because of best evidence. Now, that's when we added our younger grades based on what was happening in the community, and you'll notice that after November, our numbers started to go down. Now, importantly, you can see in December that our staff numbers decreased quite a bit. December was when our staff members started to get access to the vaccine. And throughout the months following December, we have been very intentionally sharing that information and working with Unified Command and our vaccine hub to expedite access to the vaccines for our staff members who want them. It is not a mandate. Our March numbers only are for like a week and a half of March, so just be very aware of that. Yes, and that's important to note for November and December also. We were out for several weeks during those time frames, and I will tell you that reporting is voluntary. We have a mandatory reporting for staff members so that we can protect our students and colleagues. For students, it's voluntary. Now, we've requested it, but parents are not obligated to report positive cases, and I will tell you that occasionally during breaks, if a staff member is within a safe time frame of exposure, we may not have captured all of those positive cases. So that is with us being out of school for a couple of weeks. We also had that time frame in February where we were not physically in buildings. We've seen a dramatic decrease in the number of children quarantined and missing school with use of masks. One thing to think about as far as academic gains and losses, every single day that a child is out of a classroom, they can lose academic time. Now, I'm grateful we have Midland Online Academy. That has been a huge help, and that provides a space for students and families who are not comfortable with masks to keep their children educated and engaged. With each COVID diagnosis, a child misses a minimum of 10 days of school, give or take, depending on when we find out about it. And then for each positive COVID diagnosis or COVID cases that we don't know about, there's an additional 4 exposures or multiple exposures that require quarantine. So we're working very hard to keep our doors open and to keep our academics in a good place. That's one of the recommendations that our medical providers had, was that one of the reasons we've been able to stay open safely is because of the masks.
So one question I have is, and I agree that you have done, I have been, and I've told you this personally, I've been so impressed because when we were campaigning to come back in the fall, I think that there was a lot of hesitation that we would have to close in schools here and there, and we'd have campuses, and it'd just be a complete mess. And I know that there have been times where it has felt that way, but my experience, my daughter's been quarantined once. We've been very fortunate, but when I look at the data, and we've all become very familiar with these graphs.
Sure.
My question to you as the professional is, it's starting to really look like we hit the peak and we're coming off the backside, and it's starting to look really good. So it's hard for me to understand, what does the graph have to look like in order for, I mean, it just comes to a point where it's like, I understand that there will be risks, there will be cases, we will continue to have some spread because the vaccine is not universal. But at some point I do have to ask myself, looking at the graph, like, where does it have to be in order for it to make sense, just from your standpoint?
Absolutely, and that is a fair question. One thing that I have to do personally when I'm looking at those is take a step back and look at the peaks of where we are now compared to the peak in the summertime. Because our peak numbers now are higher than they ever were at that summer peak. And I'm not talking district-wide, I'm talking citywide, countywide, statewide. Remember in the summertime where we had some high numbers and everybody thought, oh, this is the peak, it's the big one. There was a projection study that was put out in March of 2020, and when it first arrived, I took it to our district leadership and said, this is something we need to have on our horizon, and it looks like rolling peaks and valleys, and that is exactly what we have seen. Now, part of the reluctance and the reason the health experts have recommended continued masking is the arrival of the variants. The variant that we see most right now is B117, or people refer to it as the British variant. It is more transmissible and tends to have poorer outcomes than the original variant. So that's part of why there is this reluctance to think that we've actually hit a decline. We've kind of plateaued. Now, locally, we've hit a decline, which is excellent news. Statewide, nationwide, that is not the case. And if we operated in a vacuum where we only interacted with Midland individuals, we might be in the place where we could back off of some of this, but we do not operate in a vacuum, and we have travel back and forth, and we have exposures for our staff and students and every individual across the state, across the nation. So there is a cautiousness because of the variants presence and because our numbers are higher than they were in the summertime. So we've plateaued. We as a district are looking good. Part of the reason we look this good is because of the mask mandate.
My question to you is, so the district's done, gone out and asked, obviously, professional advice, consultation with their physicians, and they're recommending for the mask, for the continued use of the mask. So to our public that, has come here to speak and engage in the topic, the process of making a decision is not so much in the fact that there's a portion potentially that could not wear a mask versus a portion that might need to wear a mask, and then this portion might not need to, and then maybe this portion might need to. But the problem is when you're talking about the welfare and safety of people, it's kind of hard to play, in a sense, Russian roulette and say, hey, this day we're okay because the numbers have gone down. And then this day we're not okay because the numbers have gone up. And I wish personally that we had all the information. I mean, I personally wish we had all the information regarding COVID. But yet, a year later, a year plus later, we still, as a society, cannot answer every question related to COVID. And here recently, somebody was in the hospital, and the answers and the questions, well, why and how come? Why are you going to have to go back to the hospital? A very healthy individual. But the problem is that they still can't give the person the answer as to why she's sick. And the problem with the decision-making process is that, it's good to want something in a sense, but I as a board of trustee can't figure out which one doesn't need it and which one does need it in a sense. So you have to rely on consultation, recommendations from experts, because I'm not a medical doctor, and I want to point that out right now. So when I go to see my physician, she gives me consultation as to what I need and what I don't need. So I visit with her as to the recommendations for my personal health. Here, we're listening to the personal recommendations for the health of our community. So, and it's not to say that somebody's will or right is not that we're putting it aside. We have to make a decision here for the will and good of the general population in a sense. So the fact that some school districts have gone to make a choice, the Board of Trustees, I heard the number earlier, but I can't remember. But
62.
62?
Okay, Ms. Meadows, correct. I'm trusting Ms.
So
Meadows.
how many school districts?
1,200.
62 independent school districts.
No, but how many school districts?
1,200 statewide-ish.
1,250?
Yeah, something like that.
Plus,
There's 1,029 independent school districts in Texas.
okay, plus publics, plus private schools. So there's bound to be a couple thousand at the end of the day. So, 62 have taken the choice not to do it.
To that point, if I can piggyback on what Mr. Marquez is saying, Dr. Ramsey, not that we have to do what everyone else is doing, but just as an information piece, have you talked to Dr. Muir and ECISD? I mean, we know what Greenwood's made, their decision, and we know what that is. Is there conversation amongst superintendents about what that's going to look like statewide that you could?
After TEA came out with their updated guidance, we had superintendent calls and superintendent group me text messages, and out of the first initial, that 1029, in that first week, there were 6 school districts that were going to change their mask mandate, and then we heard that it was about 50. So now I think it's up to 62, but the majority were not at this time.
I have a question. So ECISD right now currently is in the same has taken the same stance as we have, which is to leave the mask mandate in place. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I wanted to ask another professional opinion question, and I don't know if you have more data that might inform this, but what is your opinion about the age of mask wearing? Because I will tell you, it is very difficult to learn phonics and to learn to read or to be tutored when you cannot see your second grade or first grade teacher's mouth moving. So much of what you're learning has to do with all of that. And I also know that first and second graders and kindergartners in particular are not doing, and it shouldn't be that a teacher's having to constantly ask them to do that. So I'm starting to ask myself the question of at what point, and do we have any data to back up the grade level distinctions? Because I know that the spread tends to be more prevalent in older children rather than younger.
So the spread happens regardless of age, and just anecdotally, I can pull some numbers, but just anecdotally speaking, before we put the mask mandate into place for our younger grades, we had entire classrooms that were repeatedly quarantined, and we had positivity cases in those, staff, students, other individuals. And so the impact of that academically, I would say the presence of a mask in a classroom with adaptations that we have in place. Our teachers use great expressive voices. They use great physical movements, great eye movements. And then for phonics, our teachers, when they can keep the physical distance, are able to use the face shield so that the students can see their faces. So we've made those wonderful adaptations. Our younger students, while their compliance with mask usage, or their participation, I should say, is not 100% perfect, neither is any adult. It is one of the best protections we have in place. There are some things that are recoverable, and there are some things that are not recoverable. We don't know what the long-term consequences of this will be for body systems. We're learning more that some individuals who have this will likely have lifelong chronic conditions from it. So in terms of protection and impact on our younger students, and I've worked with kids, it's all I've ever done, been a pediatric nurse specialist for close to 30 years. We've dealt with young people who have adapted and learned well with these masks in place. The impact of the mask being in place and the student being on campus in school, I would garner is less than the student being out for 7 days because of a quarantine, and or longer if the child has to be hospitalized, and we have had some students hospitalized. And then we think about the long-term learning impacts of what this can do. So the masks are a temporary measure to get us through a certain time frame. I can't predict what that will look like with the variants. If you had asked me a year ago, I could tell you what the modeling predictions showed, and they've kind of played out with the peaks and valleys. I expect that we will get to a point where we have some herd immunity and that the masks will no longer be one of the most recommended or the most recommended mitigation pieces.
Go ahead.
Sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so with that piece in place, you know, I've heard from multiple principals that have said in-person learning is the priority.
Yes.
And I tend to agree. I think that having kids in class, and I was very vocal about that when we didn't come back in the fall. But to that end, at some point, the public is becoming very restless with the restrictions. I personally have felt very frustrated as well, and I'm sure everyone in this room has at some point. The next question is, okay, so if we leave masks in place, when are we going to start allowing visitors back on campus, PTAs to meet, be able to work in their workrooms? When are we going to allow, you know, academic assemblies that start the day, you know? All these different things that equate to a normal student environment that we have been taken away. At some point, if you leave the mask, then can we at least have, you know, some of these other restrictions loosened?
I'm going to piggyback because mine's similar, so you can just answer it all at one time. So, and I'm conflicted for students in MISD, you know,
Yeah.
Booker. Is there a middle ground to keep the mask for the close proximity classroom, but, you know, if you're at PE or at athletics or if you are going to do that there is some benefit to the mask where parents can go back on campus and volunteer with PTA and some of the things that were brought up? Are we to a point from a safety standpoint without compromising the safety that there are some, you know, there is some give and take there as we see how it continues to progress with the vaccinations and the herd immunity?
So I want to answer your question about PE and athletics first.
Okay.
We follow the CDC's recommendations for face coverings. So anytime students are running or participating in something where they would have to breathe heavily, the masks may come off and should come off. We are able to space during those events. A lot of times it's held outdoors. If that is not the case, I would encourage parents and community members to contact their principals and to ask their campus nurse if they have questions about that. For athletics, students are required to wear the masks unless they are actively participating. So to answer the question about expanding visitation and expanding parental involvement, which I know we have all of us have desperately been missing, we are evaluating that right now. It would be much, much safer with the masks in place, and it might be prohibitive without masks in place. And that includes for visitors and our students, because there is still a significant risk.
So going back to the athletics, and maybe this was prior to this decision to allow, but I've actually seen kids participating on court in the basketball games, volleyball games with a mask on.
Sure.
But you're saying that that's not required. Are you saying that that's not a requirement that they wear one? Because I think that's been misunderstood then.
So if Blake, our athletic director, is here, he could speak to that as well. It is a strong recommendation because those students are in close contact. They are right next to each other. They come in contact with each other, and spread amongst athletic teams is high. So it is a recommendation. Blake, I'd like to.
So Blake, what are the policies for practice, indoor, outdoor,
When we started basketball season, we were very concerned about, obviously, when you're out playing basketball and you're getting in each other's face throughout the basketball game. And at the time, as you can see, that was the height of the pandemic as it progressed through Midland. And as I said, we were very concerned about that. And when we started, we asked our basketball players to try to wear the mask even while they were playing. After about a month or so of that, we did not require that anymore. Now with the outside sports, we're taking the mask off when we go participate.
What is the policy? So it is not a mandate for athletics currently. Is that correct? It's just highly suggested.
It is highly suggested.
And does that go for practices as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we please let y'all know that there
tell her not to have outbursts.
There's now 78 districts that have chosen to do away with masks.
All right, thank
Mrs.
you. And
Douglas.
I'm going to ask one more time that we not have outbursts. We do have security in the back, and if you continue to have outbursts, we will remove you from the audience tonight because we do need to have this discussion.
I think that the last question for myself, and I'm sorry to dominate, and I hope everybody takes their time, but I do have a hard time understanding how to respond to parents when they bring up the mental health issue. And I know masks are one piece of the mental health portion that we have all experienced. It's virtual learning, it's fear, it's COVID, it's just the unknown and the constant threat that you may be quarantined or whatever. But when it comes to masks and mental health, I do see some of the correlation, and I just want to ask, how do we respond to that?
Thank you for that question. Mental health is something that is near and dear to me for a lot of reasons. And I can tell you that removing the mask does not remove the clear and present threat of COVID. Our children are dealing with lots of different circumstances worldwide right now that are difficult to process. And so removing the mask does not remove people getting sick with COVID, people dying with COVID, children hearing about COVID, and it also amplifies their risk and the risk for people around them. So when we talk about mental health for our students, one of the best things we can do is help equip our students and each other for how to create healthy responses to unpredictable circumstances, which we are all in right now. We see that for all ages. And whether it is this challenge or another challenge, we can help bolster and foster that responsiveness in our children. And like I said, taking the mask away does not remove the threat, and it doesn't remove the concerns that our children are facing. And on the same note, removing the mask increases the likelihood that our students who are struggling will be out of school for illness and for quarantine. And it increases the likelihood that someone they know will get sick with COVID and heaven forbid, die from COVID. And it's not a fear ploy. I've worked in infectious diseases with children my entire career. I'm not afraid of COVID. I do think it would be ill-advised for us not to take the best recommendations and the best peer-reviewed evidence that we have about how to protect our students, our staff members, and our larger community mentally, physically, emotionally, and academically during this time.
Do you feel that one of the obstacles is one of the obstacles that you can't see it, obviously?
Absolutely.
So to me, I feel like one of the obstacles is that you can't see it, and since we can't see it, obviously, I mean, it's hard to figure out at the end of the day, who actually infected who, and, who died from it.
Yes.
And who was a responsible party in the sense, So there's an obstacle in a sense that it's hard to understand as to the complexity of the virus and the COVID that's affected our businesses, our life, our community, and so forth. And the numbers prove it because it's obviously there's a lot of fatality that's happened to it, mortality rate, and infections and people in the hospital. But do you feel just the fact that this disease is that you can't see it, can't touch it, you can't identify it, you can't tell if the person next to you's got it, you can't tell if the person next to you's going to die tomorrow from it? Is that still the stigma of the whole process?
I think the fact that a virus is a very complex organism and it is invisible, and we do not know unless we test who has it and who doesn't have it, because we know that people who have zero symptoms can and do spread COVID. The other challenge that we have is it is very frustrating for us as human beings to be told, you must wear a mask. I do not like my mask. I have spent hours in isolation units in them. I have never in my life until this point in time spent all day, every day in one, even when I go to the grocery store. So I do not like these. I am as anxious as anyone to get rid of them. I liken it to our smoking policy, because smoking, we know, has an impact on others as well as ourselves. I absolutely can make the decision for myself to smoke 6 packs a day. I cannot, however, make that decision to smoke 6 packs a day in a classroom with a child, because we know there are health consequences to that. We can see smoke, we can smell it. We cannot see COVID, we can't smell it. We put in place some protections to keep ourselves and those around us safe. And it is a very frustrating circumstance.
Dr. Ramsey or Sid, just so I'm clear, what's before the board is take no action, and the policies and procedures that are in place will continue until addressed by the board at a later time. If there is a change to be made, whatever that looks like, a motion and a second, some discussion, and a vote. Is that correct?
You're going to modify or eliminate the mask requirements, then you would need a formal motion and a vote.
And no action leaves tomorrow's school day look like today's. Is that right, Imogene?
Yes, no action means tomorrow's school day looks like today. And I would encourage each of us, as our children, we talked about mental health, as our children and our adults have gone through change after change after change after change, for the students and staff members and adults who talked about the impact of the mask, I will tell you, we will have an equal, maybe more dramatic impact with the removal of the mask for a large set of our population. And again, I don't like these things. I'm ready to get rid of them. Mike, would you advance to the next? I want to show a picture. Our students do much better with this than any of us adults. They really, really do. Our students are adaptable, they're responsive, and they are important to protect. What other questions do you guys have?
I just have, this just came through on my phone.
Absolutely.
The MRT just released that COVID cases are down to an 8-month low, which is great news, and everyone should celebrate. My question is at some point, I just keep coming back to this place of like, what is the touchdown? What's the mile marker? We have to have something to go off of to make these decisions. It's just very difficult to decide yay or nay, because I see both sides of this coin almost equally. But is it 8 months? Is it 10 months? Is it 12 months? Like 8 months seems like a really good place. And so, I don't know. I mean, how do you react to that news?
I can tell you that if I could predict the time frame on this, I could retire and go home and take several of you with me, and we could all retire together. And I say that not to be flippant, but I say that because when we are dealing with a novel pathogen, which this is a novel virus, we started our experience with it a year ago, or a little less than a year ago. So we are learning about it, and as we are learning about this virus, the virus is learning about us, if you will. So there are variations and there are mutations that take place. I say that not out of fear, but just it's something we need to keep on the horizon. I don't know the answer to that. Now, if you asked me, do I think that we will have to wear masks and do all of these mitigation pieces in the fall? I'm hopeful that we won't. I'm hopeful that our vaccination and our natural immunity, because of the level of exposure, will get to a place where we're no longer face up like this with this disease, that we had zero natural human immunity with to begin with. I'm hopeful we get to that place and that the vaccinations catch up and we can put a lid on it before the variants cause greater concerns.
Can we call for a motion and then discuss if there is one?
Well, let me take, Mr. Bishop, would you like to add anything in the conversation?
I guess one of the things I look at when I look at the big picture, I truly understand some of the frustrations that parents have, and or teachers for that matter, of removing the mask. I truly understand that. I had never had the COVID, but I have went through the protective measures that they've asked, that the CDC and our local health department has asked us to do. But I do know people that have had the COVID, and I've experienced 2 people in my family that have lost their lives because of the COVID. We've had people within the district, as far as even on this board, to be the matter of fact, has had the virus. I'm not saying that it's a cause of anybody else that's out in the audience, but I do personally would like to see our seniors this year, because they didn't get to last year, have a normalcy in graduation. I think that's very important to those seniors coming forward. I just think and believe that our health department is looking out for the best interest of our city and not as individually. And some of us are looking at that way individually on what is best for my child. And I understand that on what you feel is best for your child. But when you sit in the seat that we all sit in here at the table this evening, we got to look at what's in the best interest of all children. And my purpose for serving on the board is to see that every child gets an opportunity at an education through the teachers that we have that are providing that professionalism. And I think if we have a detour from that where our teachers, I know more so than our students, are not probably catching the virus, but some of them can be passing that on to some of our teachers. And if we have a shortage of teachers now, and we have another outbreak or an outburst that's going to hinder that, then that's going to put us almost back to where we started, with some of our teachers being away from the school system, not able to educate our children. So my stance personally is to stay with the recommendation from our local health authorities. I think that's their profession. That's what they do every day. I know we want to right for our children. I truly understand that, and I respect that. But I also respect that those people are our frontline workers. They're the ones that's seeing this stuff day in and day out on people getting sick, whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, or whether it's an elder, and people losing their lives. And then they're also putting their life at stake as far as being frontline workers, having to deal with some of the cases that all of us have experienced here in Midland. So that's my take, where I stand.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Davis?
I've heard from a lot of folks, and I've talked to a lot of folks about this issue, and much like tonight, the responses were mixed as to what should be done. However, when I focused on just the teachers, the spouses of teachers and staff, but for one speaker tonight, it's been unanimous by teachers, by staff, and spouses of staff and teachers that they want to continue the mask mandate in place. The reason they have told me they want to keep the mask mandate in place is that they believe it has been part of the mitigation and keeping down the spread of COVID from what it otherwise would be. They're concerned for their own health, they're concerned for their students' health, and they're concerned for the families of their students. So they're in favor of the mandate continuing. They're also concerned for their students in the respect that they believe that if the mandate were removed or significantly altered, that more parents would opt to take their students out of school. And there seems to be a consensus, perhaps the only thing there's a consensus about regarding this COVID, is that while some students have thrived online, most have not. Most believe that it's important for students to be in the classroom. And so they're concerned that removal of the mask mandate would cause more students to be removed from classroom and attempt to go to online because of their fear of the safety of their children's health and their family's health if their child were contracted and bring it home. Even though their child may not be that adversely affected, although we have instances in which children have been adversely affected. So when I focus on that segment of the folks that have responded to me, it's nearly unanimous. All but one has expressed the mandate should continue. Meanwhile, I view this as a health issue, not a political issue. That's just me. But I entrusted my children's health to pediatricians. And I know that my children are entrusting my grandchildren's health to pediatricians. And when the American Academy of Pediatricians recommend that children ages 2 and over continue to wear a mask and practice the other social distancing measures, mitigation measures, I think that's important and that's significant to me. I also listened to my local health officials, and they appear to be unanimous. Dr. Wilson of the County Health Department, Director of Health Services, Imogene Douglas, they're all unanimous in their recommendation that we continue the mask mandate. And so for me, while I appreciate the strong felt opinions of those that want to change the mask mandate or remove it altogether, I am persuaded that it should continue. And that's why I hope that there's not a motion that passes at least, to change anything. But before I finish speaking, I would like to, a little bit off topic, I would like to compliment the county health officials, the county, all those responsible for the vaccination program that's taking place here in Midland County. It is extraordinary. We have people coming from all over Texas, all over the United States, coming here because they can make an appointment, they can be served, and it's fast, easy, efficient. And I hope that all Midland County residents who want the vaccine will do so and take advantage. But those that do and those that have experienced, they've had a wonderful experience. And I just want to say thank you for those responsible for that.
Ms. Joyner?
I echo that. I have seen just incredible strides in that effort, and it feels very patriotic and uplifting in a time that has been very dark. I have been very torn on this issue because I do believe that there comes a point where you have to just say, this is the red line in the sand. We've met our red line marker, and we need one. That is probably the thing that has been most frustrating to me during COVID. I know no one has a crystal ball. I know that there's no way to know what the mile marker should be, but we should strive to have one, is what I feel like. I felt that way when we didn't go back to school in the fall. It felt like, okay, well, what are the requirements in order to return? So the question that I have, and it's not even something that I would motion, but that I ask of the district, is to please start to set expectations. Please start to give the community an idea. Is it 8 months? Or a data-driven decision where we can say to people, you know what, just a little while longer. Because my personal opinions about masks and the politicization of it and all of that has to be set aside. And we have to look at it through the lens of what's best for our kids. And my priority has always been and will always be having children in school, priority, in-person learning, and hopefully having a normal, typical learning environment for the fall. So if we need to leave the mask mandate in place for 2 more months in order to buy that time, I would be willing to participate in that. However, my expectation, assuming that my crystal ball is right, and it may not be, is that we resume school in the fall without masks and hopefully in a position where we can begin to allow our students to resume normal, everyday functions and or environments. And so I also think that clarifying about our athletics was important tonight, that there is some leeway in allowing our students to make that choice for themselves, especially when they're participating in exercise. I would hope and need more clarification. So one question I'm realizing I didn't have answered is, so at the elementary level, you're saying, I know that if they're participating in a sport, UIL, they're not required to wear a mask. However, are we requiring, I mean, I know that my kids wear their mask in PE. So is that a campus decision that's been made, or is it a district decision that's been made? I think she wears her mask in PE. I honestly haven't asked her, and I should have, and I apologize for that. But we've heard from some parents tonight that their child does. So what is the recommendation on the PE?
So the district's recommendation is that we follow the CDC's guidance for face covering use in schools, and that provides some information about masks should be worn in these circumstances, and in certain circumstances there
So
should
is
be
it
some allowance.
Is it ultimately up to the PE coach?
That
or the
guidance
child?
That guidance, as far as I understand, has been provided to our PE coaches on every campus. That was provided at the beginning of the year and a couple of times since then.
What is I'm just not clear.
Sure. So the recommendation is that for PE activities that require, for example, running, that require children to breathe heavily, that take place at a physically distanced capacity and outdoors, so that masks are not required. There are lots of PE activities that do not require heavy breathing, if you will, or cause the respiratory rate to go up. And so for those activities, we do require masks inside. And now there are always students who need a mask break for whatever reason.
Right.
Our staff are very mindful of that, and we follow those CDC recommendations.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, with that being said, difficult decision, but I think that the priority is fall and in-person learning for me.
Mr. Tuskegee? All right, since we're not looking necessarily for a motion, I'm going to go ahead and speak before we pass on the mic. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you that showed up tonight to speak. Even if you're for, you're against, thank you for being here, because it is a big topic and it is something we all have a lot of opinions on. I don't have a single friend on my daughter's volleyball team that wanted me to come tonight to vote for masks. I will tell you that. They all want the freedom. But I do know that my 7th grade daughter at track and at volleyball was able to take the mask off while she's competing or while she's running. They had the mask around their neck. They're prepared when it's not time. I think it's important, as Ms. Joyner stated, Dr. Ramsey, that we make sure that we get the message out to our PE teachers and coaches that we are sharing the message. If we're doing physical activity, that we need to make sure that we are allowing them to remove the mask while they distance. And I do think it's also important, and something I was able to speak to the Midland Council of PTA presidents and principals last week, was that we want PTA back on campuses. We want to use that mitigation of masks to get those people back on our campuses in our classrooms, as well as possible military recruiters at our high schools. Some of the things like that we can, that we need those volunteers in our campus, on our campuses. For me personally, when I first heard the governor's mandate, I was like, yes, let's give our students and let's give our teachers a opportunity. If they want to wear the mask, wear the mask. But that same afternoon, as I was going through my jubilation, I had the opportunity to listen to Mr. Myers from Midland Memorial, and I had the opportunity to hear from Mr. Wilson give their opinions that Midland was not ready yet, that we've not vaccinated enough, and we've not seen that. And so I temper my results, my thought process on that as well, that we need to slow down. Ms. Joyner said it again. My priority is I want kids to be able to go to school starting in the fall without any of this mitigation, and we want to get back to being normal. And my personal opinion is I want to get rid of MOA unless it's a planned MOA and we have a plan set up and we know what we're doing with the limited amount of kids, with the right amount of teachers and the right plan. I don't want MOA anymore. So I think it's important that we move slowly. If the medical information changes between now and April's board meeting, which I think is the third Monday in April, I would be all for listening again to see if there's an update that we should take into consideration. But at this time, I think it's best for our teachers and our students that we hold our mandate in place and not make a change just yet. Mr. Marquez?
Yeah, I just want to same stuff that's been said tonight about wish that things could have progressed faster, quicker, in the sense of where we're at and what we're doing. And it's interesting to hear the testimony from people that there's been a lot of board decisions regarding different topics, but it's just interesting to get to hear the testimony from people regarding that topic. And some of them gone back 40, 30, 60 years. One of the things that people talked to me about was about polio. That's why I asked the question earlier about the obstacle in the sense of you can't see it, you can't touch it. But I got people talking to me about polio and how ugly that was to their families and how devastating that was, and how they spent driving in the car all night to Dallas, to Lubbock, the nearest place they could get the vaccination for that. So when you get to hear all these testimonies from different people about what's happened, you tend to err on the caution of safety. And if the professionals, the doctors are telling you that this is the course you should take, all I can do as a public official here is take their recommendation for the general population and their safety. And I'm hoping that in a month, maybe things are different. Like I said, I don't know. I wish we still could argue this disease at a point that we knew everything and the long-term effects and what it's not going to do and do to people. But for now, we're still not there yet, so it's a no motion here.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Mr. Booker?
All right. I'm torn. I see both sides of it. I see the reason we should keep them. I see the reasons we should keep them. I absolutely hate this thing. I'm up here sweating right now because of the mask. I hate it. But I put a post out on Facebook and everybody say, well, you're not a doctor, you're no doctor, you're no nurse, you're a school board member. Well, yeah. So hearing from the nurses and doctors, they recommend that we keep the mask. Do I agree with it? Heck no. But I'm not a doctor or a nurse. So with that being said, I think that if we keep the mask, we should allow parents back on campuses and let the parents get back to the normalcy with their kids. But I say I agree with Katie. I mean, the mask, I hate it. But I'm no doctor or nurse, so I guess I'll follow the recommendations of the CDC, but
Mr. Murray,
I think we should.
Just another add-on, if I may, just for a second. As you and Mr. Booker have stated, from our teachers or our parents and our PTA, as well as our recruiters, as well as our recruiters.
Please refrain from speaking on your way out, please.
Hey, we all have opinions. All right, I'm not going to sit here and let y'all disrespect us as a school board. I watch y'all do it all the time, and I'm not going to sit here and let you disrespect the school board.
Anyway, what I was saying, Mr. Murray, as far as repeating what Mr. Booker and yourself stated, as far as our PTA, our parents, we have our military recruiters, we have college recruits that come in and want to talk to students. I just think if we follow that protocol as far as wearing the mask, enabling or giving those people the opportunity to come back on our campuses, I think that would, I know it's something that Dr. Ramsey, you and your team are working on, so I would support that as well, trying to get them back on the campuses to be a support.
Just a quick clarification, is that something, if there is no action, is that something that can be done without on a campus by campus or however that would work? And if the mitigations are in place and Imogene is still kind of overseeing that,
Yes.
and things like parents being allowed, that doesn't need board action?
Correct. That's something that can be handled by the administration.
Thank you.
And then the other clarification I would make is I've heard a couple times tonight that this is some sort of policy that we're changing. Let's be clear, this was a gubernatorial mandate, which the TEA then, this is a state policy and mandate. This is not anything that MISD, that this board did initially that we would be changing. It's not our policy.
It is our policy, the within the guidance of the TEA, because like what's
But
been
the
made-
original mandate was a gubernatorial mandate. It was not
Correct.
something that we did unilaterally.
Correct.
And this is just an aside, but I did get some clarification on PE. At least at my daughter's school, they were socially distancing the kids so that they didn't have to wear their masks, and the kids actually preferred being able to participate in games together, and so they asked them to wear their masks, is the understanding I have, which would make sense and be in line with what we're working with. So I just wanted to clarify.
So is this recommendation just for the end of school, or does it fall over to the fall? Because I don't agree with wearing them in the fall.
We were only taking action for this school year and to remove masks for right now. So we will have a separate action.
Like Mr. Mercy, we can address it again in April if the numbers change and I'm even coming back and says, there's no action right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have a kindergartner, man, and I agree with the teachers. He needs to see lips. I'm 33 years old and I still read lips. I still read lips, and my kindergarten needs to learn by reading lips and seeing the words come out of the teacher's mouth. So, I mean, that's where I stand. I'll follow the CDC recommendations, but I think we should let it be a parent choice on my house.
And I think we're just really talking about expectations at this point. And we need to all, I think that I'm just looking at the administration in the district, hopefully asking for more information in terms of what those expectations are. So.
Okay, board, do I hear any motions? Based on your silence, we will take no action. We will move on. And I've been requested, the time is 8:03, and I would like to take a 5-minute recess before we get into consent items on item 5. So please allow us five minutes. The time is now 8:11, and we will end the recess and come back to order. The next item on the agenda is item 5, consent agenda. Item A, board meeting minutes. B, TASB policy update 116. CQB local, DCD local, GKA local, found on page 34. Monthly financials, found on page 39. The depository bid extension, found on page 51. Budget amendment, found on page 53. F, competitive seal proposal, roofing repair, hail damage for various schools, found on page 56. Item G, contracts over $100,000, found on page 57. Item H, pre-kindergarten adoption of instructional materials, page 59. Item I, personnel appointments, page 77. And item J, board gifts, page 82. Board, are there any items that you would need to deem to pull from consent at this time?
Yes, President Murray, I'd like to pull H, pre-kindergarten adoption of instructional materials, please.
Okay. Any other items, board members? Okay, at this time, items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I, and J will be deemed approved through consent. Ms. Warren, are you here? Could we call you to the podium so that Ms. Joyner could ask you questions about the pre-kindergarten adoption of instructional materials? Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Good evening, Board President, Dr. Ramsey, members of the board. I'm happy to present any information and answer any questions you have.
Okay, so I know you've been looking at this for a long time, and you've had a lot of experience with how this all came together, and I'm just kind of getting a bird's eye view, so bear with me on some of these questions. I think in reviewing the selection of the pre-K curriculum, which I think is one of the biggest decisions that we as a district are making currently, simply because we know that a lot of our problems are systemic. And we know that if we can get to kids earlier and provide a really productive pre-K environment, our learning has a lot more potential as we go forward. So one of the questions I have is, where the main issue and the reason I pulled it from consent was twofold. The 8 years stuck out to me. And when we talk about how much it costs, I think it was around the 300,000 mark. I got to find the exact number. But is that an annual cost, or is that a one-time cost? And why the 8 years?
Of course. So Proclamation 2021 is a TEA mandate for us to select a new adoption. And their mandate is for an 8-year adoption. So each 8 years we'll go through a new adoption committee trial of vendors, and we'll go through those materials and we'll vet them with an instructional materials. Yes, sir. Okay. So we'll vet those materials through an adoption committee that was specific to pre-K, and then we'll bring that to an instructional materials adoption committee to then vet as well, and then that's where we bring it to you. So it's a 3-tiered system of vetting. So that 8 years is very important that we pick a set of materials that not only checks the boxes of what TEA says that we need to have in our pre-K classrooms, but we also match it to what our student population is. So those things that we looked at were very important to us. And as a former pre-K teacher and knowing the vertical alignment that goes into the upper tested grade levels, it was important for us to look at those materials that have a social and emotional learning component to it, that we have a bilingual component to that, and that we also align to the TEKS, because we also know that pre-K does not have a TEKS alignment as far as being connected straight to the TEKS, but they have pre-K guidelines that then connect to the TEKS as well.
So,
when you list the 873 students and the 46 classrooms, is that only MISD campuses, or does that include the early childhood at Midland College collaboration? Is that across the? That's
across the board, and it also includes our LEAP students who are 3-year-olds who have disabilities who are served through pre-K. 3-year-olds are not a required population to offer pre-K to unless they are identified with disabilities, and then we use our daycare to provide that 3-year-old program to them, and that does include those students.
So when we, what is the ratio then of our teacher to student ratio in our pre-K program currently?
There's actually a requirement for that with our highly qualified programming. So with teachers and our paraprofessionals, we'll look at the fact that we need a certified teacher in the classroom, and then we have a ratio of adults to students. And I believe that ratio is 1 to 22. I'm sorry. It's 11 to 1.
So you're saying that they could have a teacher's aide, which is represents the adult, and then the certified teacher.
Correct.
So the mandate is in place that everyone in the state has to have this 8-year commitment. Is that correct? Or do we have flexibility in how long we commit to this?
No, there's not a flexibility with Proclamation 2021, but what we do have is an instructional allotment of funds to put towards the curriculum adoption. So what we did do is we looked at the vendors and what they had to offer, and if they did not necessarily hit the mark as to what we wanted to offer to our students, then what we could do is look into supplemental materials to add into the curriculum adoption and present not just one adoption, but then the supplemental materials to go with it. One of the things that we found in this curriculum is the fact that it was comprehensive. It checks all the boxes. So there's not a supplemental material that will come back to the board and ask for approval with. So what that means is all the components are there. So part of being highly qualified has certain components. For instance, one of those is a family engagement plan. And the program that we are presenting tonight for approval has a section called Ready Rosie, and it's a platform for parents to have access to family engagement activities through a dashboard. And so each one of these things not only checks the boxes, but it is set up well for Midland ISD with the fact that we have not only the access to the information, but also our students have the online access in the classroom with the one-on-one technology, but then also we have the hands-on activities that come with it as well.
Well, that was going to be my other major concern, is that is this a solely digital platform? I mean, pre-K students are developing their motor skills and their, tactile learning is so important. My fear is that in adopting a digitally heavily platform, that we're going to plug kids into an iPad and teach them to read that way. And that's my biggest fear.
Correct. It has the traditional teacher's editions with the materials that the students will have. And when we say comprehensive, it also will come with the manipulatives, the hands-on activities that the students are going to need to be able to complete those activities.
What do you think the breakdown is in the curriculum between digital and hands-on?
Honestly, I think that's going to be up to the teacher and how they implement it, because both have accessibility in the classroom. So the teacher is going to have the accessibility of the teacher's edition with those materials to be able to plan their lessons, pulling in the digital pieces, and then also the access to the hands-on activities in the teacher's edition. It's the same thing that we have with any other adoption. When you're doing your lesson planning and you're going through your teacher's adoption or your teacher's edition, you have several options to choose from. And so you pull those pieces out of the teacher's edition that you want to implement in the classroom that's best fit for your students, best fit for your teacher style, and the such. So they're going to have access to the digital and the hands-on. It's up to the teacher of how much they want to implement that.
Okay, and then this is the last question on this subject. Then this may be an ignorant question, but do we have to have a digital platform? Is it in the mandate of to meet the requirement, or can we go with a curriculum that's just old school, get out your pen, paper, your Play-Doh, and let's learn our alphabet?
It's not in the mandate that it has to be digital, but there are going to be some technology TEK standards that we have to align to through the pre-K guidelines. So if we take that digital piece out, we'll be misaligned with the TEKs.
I struggle with this because I sit and I look through the information provided, digital library of books. Well, what happened to our regular books? And interactive learning games. Okay, well, what are we doing to provide our? And I'm not trying to poke holes in everything. I just want to understand how we are giving our kids the best pre-K experience, which we all, I believe, know to be very hands-on.
Yes. So there's one question that I didn't answer for you that you did ask, and that's the one-time cost versus each year. And so it is a one-time cost. So that is the cost across 8 years. One of the things that we have to look at whenever we're vetting these programs is the fact that TEA pre-vetted them for us. So we've got a list of many vendors that we could have looked at, which I do have Lori Bustos here, who's our supervisor of the early childhood programs, and she was a bigger piece in the vendor selection. But what we do know about those vendor programs that we had to choose from is that they are 100% not just TEK aligned to where when they move into kindergarten, we've hit those kindergarten alignment pieces, but the Texas pre-K guidelines have very specific areas in which we have to target instruction. And each one of these programs hits on those in a digital format and in a hands-on format. The comprehensive view also builds a hands-on book library for our students as well. So I highlighted the digital pieces because that's something that we need to consider as we're moving into the digital age. But then it's also something that we need to consider, like we said, the old school way of teaching. And of course, 17 years ago when I was teaching Head Start pre-K and kindergarten, those were the old school ways. I was the first classroom in the district that had a smart board, and I was so excited about that. But nothing replaces that hands-on book in the classroom. And so we have, we have a grant in which Lori secured that we were putting hands-on books in the hands of our students. So they go home periodically with a book to go read with their families. It's previewed in the classroom, and then they get to go home and share it, and then they get to keep the book and build their at-home library.
Well, for me, my biggest concern is the time frame, because if we don't like this, we're married to it, and is the digital piece, mainly because I know how my children behave after they've been on an iPad for any extended period of time, whether they're learning math or watching YouTube. It's not really their best moment And so that was my hesitation, that's why I pulled it, and I think,
Mhm.
I know you guys have worked really hard, and like I said, I'm taking the 300-foot view, but those were, you've answered my question.
President Murray, if I may.
Sure.
And keeping in mind that there's a committee made up of several members, including and especially our teachers, when we're talking about preschool curriculum versus other grades, because these are pre-readers for the most part, the digital pieces are really important for the teacher, because it's the teacher that's interacting with those pieces, and then they'll create kits, or kits come with, there's manipulatives, and so it isn't necessarily really putting our youngest students kind of online, but modeling for them. So if there's a digital story, the teacher is reading and kind of showing, because again, we're talking about pre-readers. I completely understand what you're saying, but please know that it's a rich combination of kind of kits, manipulatives, but for our teacher side, it's really important for them to have that content online so that they can have access to it. So but I understand what you're saying.
And I hear what you're saying, but we do have one-to-one technology in these pre-K rooms, is that correct?
We are a one-to-one district with technology.
Right, and I just don't know that that's the best thing for pre-K children. But I think that the reason I'm so hesitant about it, and maybe have no reason to be, is just because honestly, I really truly believe that our pre-K is one of our biggest opportunity pieces in the district. And so to be very mindful of that is why I feel it's so important that we understand exactly what we're adopting.
So one of the things that we considered was the fact that we do report on 2 board goals for Lone Star governance, and that has to do with our letter recognition and numeracy as well. And in February, we reported that we were on track to meet, and not just meet, but beat those goals by the end of the school year. So just on letter naming alone, it was at 86% as our goal for the end of the school year. And at middle of year, we were already at 49%. So as we start looking at how we've been able to reach those goals, and being in a virtual setting and face-to-face setting, and what tools have we used to be able to meet or potentially meet the goal, which if we follow the trend that we are on, we will certainly be there. What we need to do is we need to look at the practices that we put in place that allowed us to present that type of data in February, and then again in May when we close out the year and end with our end-of-year goals.
Mr. Murray, I move that we accept the recommendations of the board, of the committee.
Yeah, did he motion?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, yeah, I think
We have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Marquez. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving item H, pre-kindergarten adoption of instructional materials, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warren, for being here and speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is item number 6, district presentations. Item A is academic update and board goals, GPM 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. Dr. Goodnow, welcome to the podium.
Good evening, President Murray, members of the Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Ramsey. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this mid-year report on our district progress measures. Do I have somebody advancing for me? Thank you. This month we present Board Goal 4. The 4-year graduation rate will increase from 89.7% for the graduating class of 2019 to 94% for the graduating class of 2023, understanding that that's lagging data. There's always a lag. So you can advance to the next slide. And our progress measure, we've got 3 that we're going to report on this evening. 4.1 is the percentage of first-year freshmen who are leaving 9th grade with Algebra 1 and with the Algebra 1 credit, and that will increase from 86% to 91%. And as you can see at our MOY progress measure, we're at 91%. You can go to the next slide. This is 4.2, where we look at the percentage of first year grade 9 students earning 6 or more credits, and that we're increasing, our targets to increase are from 82% to 86%, and our target this year is 84%, and we're currently at 84. And the next slide is 4.3. The percentage of second-year high school students earning 6 or more credits will increase from 75% to 81% by August 2023. This is based on 2019 school year data, and we are at 71%. Our target is 77%. That's a new progress measure for this year. So that's really just kind of where we are. If you go to the next slide, some highlights in this, and then I'll give you plenty of time for questions, and I have Mr. Horner here who can go into more detail if you have any questions. We're looking at 2% above, kind of, our trend is at about a 2% acceleration rate or above rate for the Algebra 1 indicator. We're on track to meet that second indicator of our first-time freshmen who are leaving ninth grade with 6 or more credits, so we look at middle of the year data for that. And then we can see that this first progress measure for our students who are sophomores leaving 10th grade with 10 or more credits, we're not on track. We're at 71%, and our goal is 77%. I'd like to invite us to consider, we'll report on that at the end of the year, but we do have some summer school opportunities that we're aggressively pursuing and designing right now. We're looking at how we can really maximize and optimize our funding to recover students who will need to do some credit accrual and credit recovery, especially in this very unique and interesting time. I can certainly point to MOA as being one of the barriers and obstacles, and yet also one of the ways I think students have been able to earn credit. But one of the challenges is for us this year, and we're digging into some data with our partners from the RSSP grant that TEA has kind of come alongside with us to really consider virtual instruction, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And digging into that data, we can see that already just those moves we made in December and January, as challenging as they were, but that MOA revocation, really getting our students that were not engaging and not performing in MOA back to face-to-face instruction, we already have some hints of promise that our students are performing better. So as we clean up that data, I can provide that to the trustees in a board update. If we go to the next slide, these are kind of the next steps. I mentioned summer school aggressively. Again, you'll get more information as that takes more shape. We'll continue that credit recovery even now. So one of the things that we know that we can do is identify where students have gaps or where they've fallen behind. We don't always have to make up the entire semester to get students to recover and accrue credit, and that really is that just-in-time recovery, and moving more towards how we can do that in real time will be very helpful. Again, the one we're not hitting right now is a brand new indicator in a really interesting time, but we do see that the procedures that we put in place to get our students back to face-to-face when they haven't been successful or really engaging in the MOA learning experiences is looking promising. So then the next slide is, you guys have seen, we took my picture out of the gears. I'm always going back to those gears so that we can understand how we're really focusing on those strategic priorities. For me, I call this MISD wins. Every time we get students to succeed and we're meeting our progress measures, approaching our progress measures, but really growing towards them, meeting them and exceeding them, then we're winning. So with that, I can take any questions that you might have, and Mr. Horner can fill in details.
I don't have, potentially I have a lot of questions, but I really just want to say something. I know it's not the topic of the night. It's been brought up, the MOA. I just want to add to what Mr. Murray said earlier, but it's, I don't want to say it was a bad thing. You said earlier, the good, the bad, and ugly, right? So through every process that's happened, eventually you shift out the whole process and you find out the good and the bad and the ugly of the process. But the COVID experience, obviously, Bill has brought out a lot of things. And one of the things that brought out was the potential of this online academy and how it functions. And I remember a couple of years ago, we went through to some board training, and I went to one of the sessions talking about how that MOA could work and how students do it, and it painted a portion of it painted a pretty picture, and a portion of it painted an ugly picture about it, and but according to the session I had, it was a lot of things that had been taken care of, and the students would do fine, and but now that we've actually gone through the whole process, I mean, like I said, I know it's not part of this, but however we can go about getting rid of MOA that's in its majority, I'm for it, because it's just not been a good process, and it's like I said, it's no fault to anyone in a sense. The whole year's been a learning curve for every single person out here, whether it's been your family, profession, businesses. I mean, it's just been a learning curve. But I'm trying to say that in a sense, we experimented with it. But I think it's got to go in its entirety. So.
I actually have a question that pertains to facilities about, I think you're doing the right thing, moving these kids out of MOA and back into the classroom. But we did hear from a student today talking about how there are still Wi-Fi issues. A lot of the kids that I have talked to that I know personally have preferred to stay in MOA simply because it's easier to get their work done if they're not in the building. And that's frustrating to hear. So can you guys speak to and help us understand where we actually stand with that? Because it was my understanding that we were doing a lot better in that regard, but now we're hearing otherwise. And I do think that as you put people back on campus, you've got to be able to provide Wi-Fi so they can do their work, which I'm glad they're there, by the way.
Before you answer the question, I'm going to throw my question in there, that way it'll be covered. But the grant that we were working through with the county for the fiber optic and providing I'm trying to use the proper word for the spectrum or the amount of data that you can move, but if you can add anything to that as to where that project's at. And the connectivity
I
to
know
each campus.
absolutely nothing about fiber optics, so I'm not going to even try to speak to that.
Okay.
But I will let people who do know more about what kind of the issues are, especially at Lee High School. That's been something I know we've been trying to clean up for the whole year, but I'll let them, because they know more about it.
So in regards to Wi-Fi, and Mr. Hawley is in the audience if I misspeak, Yarborough Elementary is the only campus in which we are lacking the additional access points. The contractor actually ran out of them and additional ones had to be ordered. And Mr. Hawley was following up. Do we have a date on when they will be back in the district?
So you're saying that we have blanketed Wi-Fi on both of our comprehensive?
We are upgraded on all campuses with the exception of Yarborough to Wi-Fi 6, which is compatible with the new Chromebooks that we have ordered that are now in hand with increased access points on each campus.
What was with that student's comment then?
Yeah,
So that's an excellent question that I will have to follow up with the campus about tomorrow. In addition to that, prior to the upgrade at that specific campus, in areas where we had heard from teachers that they were experiencing difficulty, we delivered boxes of hotspots. And so that particular campus was given additional hotspots in order to ensure that every campus within that building had access to Wi-Fi.
Because I'm hearing the same thing from Midland High families as well.
Okay.
So I mean,
we'll follow up.
that's a major concern, obviously.
Sure, absolutely.
And as we bring people back onto campus, it's going to be really important. So
agreed.
Thank you.
So we'll follow up. And if I'm understanding your question and comment correctly, there was a significant amount of money, $5 million, I believe, a few years ago given to the school district to support safety and security and the beautification of our campuses, essentially. The way that money has been designated, it has been essentially for $1 million per year. for security enhancements. This year, we are focusing on improved fencing on campuses, as well as the access controls for our high school campuses. So, for example, as you know, in your elementary campuses, you have to have the badge access or be buzzed in order to access campuses and classrooms. Our high school campuses, Midland High School and Lee Senior High School, do not have that access, and those campuses are open, essentially, throughout the day.
That was a collaboration with the county, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Marcus, but he was specifically talking about a program that was, I believe, grant funded through the state. Okay, she's nodding. She knows what I'm talking about.
So
That was about running, that the county was facilitating that. We were running it through the schools, through the libraries, was how they justified that, in using the downtown and Centennial Library as hubs for the fiber optics.
For the fiber optic.
And Justin Stevenson was part of that program. You know what I'm talking about, Holly? So is that done? That's what Marquez's question was. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a security question, Ms. Spencer. Through one of my visits to campus, and one of them was talking to the principal. I believe was from Bunch. I think there's a lot of traffic, I think, on both those roadways going by the school, and then we've got like a 2 or 3 foot or 4 foot fence. I think is very short, that gives people easy access to pull up to the side of the fence, and actually, if they grab a student or a child and take off, then the access point was pretty easy. So I don't know if that's something we've looked at or thought about when we're putting these security fences up around some of the schools, that it's not easy access for a 4 foot fence or whatever for somebody to have access to be able to crawl over or jump over just quickly.
Okay. When I met specifically with the principal at that campus, one thing that we were focused on is the drive behind the school. There are portable buildings there, but there was no fencing to separate the actual building from the access to that. We are working through that, and I will follow up with her. I was not aware of any requests for increased fencing in height, but we can certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just follow up with one question.
I'm going to go back to the academic report. Go Progress Measure 4.3, we're at 71 and the goal is 77. Do you have an idea of how close we are to getting those other 6? I mean, is it something that the second semester we're going to pick up, or
We have that
summer
data.
school?
I'll let Mr. Horner give you the numbers, but we have it.
Okay.
A good idea of how close we might be. Go ahead.
So I do want to come, I realize your question, I'm going to come full circle, because we have one campus, obviously this is a 10th grade, first year 10th grade, first time 10th graders goal. And so we have one campus that had the highest MOA rate in the district, and that campus significantly had data that drew that down. So with that said, one of the first steps was data that was through December, and so that campus significantly made adjustments and changes and literally brought back 400 students, and the majority of those students that were MOA students that were failing, and brought them back because we were not able to initiate some of our systems. So since then, that's part of the reason that it was significantly lower than the goal. Since then, I don't have the exact number, but they have nearly closed that target to get not the campus to get up to that goal, but for the average to get up to that goal. So by revoking MOA and putting in teacher grade reparation and credit recovery systems we have on campus, they've made great strides. I don't have the exact data to give you, but it is a cycle that had to do with the MOA group with that particular school.
What campus was it?
Well, I can provide that to you in a separate cover if that's okay.
Well, I just think it's,
We have one campus that had more MOA.
And
but to understand the environment that we're talking about, I think I mean, I
I
don't know why
think
that's
she's
a
trying to say
secret.
they don't want to out it in the public. They would rather discuss that amongst the board rather than in an open session where we're going to call out teachers or professionals.
No, I understand
It's a-
that, but I mean, I think that that's actually a public comment question, but I will defer to you, Mr. Murray.
I will definitely get that data to you, Ms. Joyner, and the board, so you have that to see. From a standpoint of, when we're talking about failure rates, I mean, it goes right down to teachers. When you're talking about 10th grade failure rate, you could pick out the 6 teachers in English 1 that caused that, or English 2. You know what I mean? So we are trying to not make that a public statement, but we can definitely get you that data. I think you could see it does correlate to your question, on students that choose to go to MOA, especially in the fall. We definitely heard that, and board members I know heard the concerns about the being able to turn in work, digitally. So since then, what we've definitely made sure was in place was when we had such high rates of quarantine and students out for COVID and teachers out for COVID, we maintained, whether you were in class or not, pretty much, the use of Canvas and Google Classroom as a digital platform where you turned in work. And so what we heard in the fall was a lot of, well, if I have to turn in my work digitally and I'm struggling to get it on through Wi-Fi, then why should I be there, And so we have worked with administrators and teaching staff on moving away from, so we still have it in the platform because that is where it resides, but students can turn in work paper pencil. It does not have to be turned in through Canvas or Google Classroom 100%, with the exception maybe a dual credit class that requires that because that's some of the college criteria. So we have moved away from a lot of the language we heard of complaints in the fall about being able to submit work digitally because we were struggling. Now, there was a campus, Lee High School had very specific concerns about Wi-Fi. Ms. Spencer went in, they put access points. Quite literally, right before spring break, I met with that same group that same teacher group that initiated some of that language and checked on the Wi-Fi specifically because I knew at that point the access points had been in place. And so their feedback was night and day from what we heard in the fall. Now, obviously, when the debate student who wrote their debate speech and gave it to you, obviously there are still places that we're going to check up on. But I can tell you that that group of teachers was very positive about the changes that have happened October versus, February at that time.
Well, I want to say I was very impressed with the students, how they picked their topic and went about it, And
I, by no means do I mean to diminish the young lady's concerns about Wi-Fi because
there's issues,
There are issues, yes, sir.
But it's like any system, right? I mean, you can pick one item, and then we can debate that with all that, regardless of one Wi-Fi not working or partial, or But I understand her concern, and there's not an organization that doesn't have something that is going on at the time that requires a repair or an extension or so forth. But I do appreciate her willingness to come up here and professionally give her point of view. So.
And I'm certain that there is every bit of truth behind that, and that is something we continue to work with. What I can tell you, though, again, is we heard from teachers at Lee High School very specifically. Ms. Spencer and I met with that group of teachers, and there were strong issues that we've been working to address. And Ms. Spencer's department really, stepped up and responded with Wi-Fi support. There's still access point issues, I'm certain. There's places, times that Wi-Fi is an issue. But as a response to that, we have backed off on, you may turn in work, paper, pencil. We're not requiring 100% submission online. So that is something that's a support, it supports that kid that is in class that is turning in work that for some reason that time the Wi-Fi access point didn't connect.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, to both of you, we are quick on this stage to express our disappointment when the goal progress measures aren't met. Here this evening, we've heard in two instances in which, in the first instance, goal progress measure 4.1, you're ahead of schedule at the middle of year to beat not only this year but future years' pace. So congratulations on that. That's exciting. Thank you. And on 4.2, you're on track to meet this year's goal, and I hope that continues. And so congratulations and compliments to all those responsible, teachers, staff, and administrators. Thank you for that. And we hope, however, that on 4.3, we are going to express our disappointment on that. We understand you've given us some explanations for it. Hopefully those can be remedied this semester and that the year end will finish on track. But thank you.
Thank you so
for all
much.
that
The
you
staff really deserve that, and I appreciate it, because I go back to, and just one statement, it was on the PowerPoint, because this first year of 10th grade, we saw the exact pattern in 9th grade. It was one of those things we knew, we measured, but when it was measured as a board goal, it definitely increased and shored up systems to make sure it happened. And we're seeing that with 10th grade. 10th grade is our most at-risk group in high school at this point. And that's just this year's data with all these kids. And we saw that relationship to the high number of MOA that was there. But I do firmly believe that we'll continue to replicate the systems that we've put in place in 9th grade to really make sure those are in 10th grade. And that did take time to get to that point, but that's part of why those goals are above the progress measures, or above trend. So thank you for the compliment.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Dr. Goodnow and Mr. Horner. All right, and the next item on the agenda is item 6B, financial update. Mr. Dodds, welcome back, and this can be found on page 93 of your packet.
It seems like forever since I was up here. It's a couple hours, but anyway, as we look at some of the things that's happened in the financial part of the district, we did a bond refunding that was $39.45 million, and which was a 2014 series, which essentially will save the district and taxpayers a little over $16.5 million over the life of the bonds, and which per year is about $828,000. We did go through some bond ratings, and actually over spring break I participated in a bond call rating by Moody's that have changed their way to do schools as far as the rating, and maybe looking at an upgrade through the Moody's rating system. So we're waiting to hear how that went. Hopefully I didn't mess that up and go the wrong direction. But we also talked about the Tazewell Purchasing Award of Merit that the Purchase Department received. In February, ASBO, which is an international organization that TASBO is an affiliate. So you have Texas ASBO, and then you have ASBO that is an international organization. Our budget department received the Pathway to the Meritorious Budget Award, which allows us to go ahead and apply for the Meritorious Budget Award. And a lot of it is how we give information to our public, and how readily available and how easy it is to look at it on our website, and all the different budget information that we give, plus the way we do our budgets. And so, those are some of the things that have happened throughout the year. We have a deal today to go ahead and pay off some additional debt. This is not a refunding that's coming to the board later on. This is actually just go ahead and pay off the $3 million, a little over $3 million that would be coming due in a couple of years. But this would save another $185,000 worth of interest. And this was built in the debt service budget to go ahead and do that this year. And then we also received, I skipped over some, sorry, I know you're trying to chase me on the deal. I didn't flip my page, but one of the things that also the comptroller recognized the district in the traditional finances and debt obligation transparency stars, which is something that this district has never been able to accomplish. And this team that that I get to work with has done a great job in everything that they do and make sure that we are as transparent as we can be. I believe that's it. For the budget highlights, with the budget amendment tonight, which included also the ADA hold harmless that was given to us here just this past month to go ahead and extend the hold harmless from the first 3 weeks to the rest of the year. That helped a lot, but it's also we will need, as we are budgeting for next year, to look at what our actual ADA has been, and that'll be something as we move into the budget workshops that we will be working for. But we're looking at.
Does that recapture number say the estimate was 118 and it's going to be 143?
Yes, and that was where we were at the first part of the year. You have to remember, in school finance, it changes from template to template each time we get an additional information. We get to upgrade our change what's happening in our budget. Now, we had increased our recapture to 131 million.
Yeah, I thought it was 131.
Yes, but that was still at collecting taxes at 311 million. And as of end of February, we were at 318 collected, so we were over budget as far as what we originally budgeted.
I see the projection.
And then we were predicting that we'll finish at 337.
Are we hearing anything, Dr. Ramsey or Dodds, from the legislature? I mean, is there going to be, there were some things done the last biennium and some hold harmless. I mean, are some of those going away? Are we going to get, a hickey on the back end because that's going to go away given where the state budget is? Do we know anything about what it's going to look like?
Right now, everything is staying with House Bill 3 that they approved in the last legislative session. There are some cleanup bills for unintended consequences that are going on right now that the House has done and is also mirrored in the Senate. I don't know all the particulars of what the cleanups are. A lot of it has to do with your small and mid-school allotments that affected CTE funding for those smaller districts. So those are some of the things that they are correcting to benefit school districts. I have not seen them look at taking anything away that was passed in House Bill 3. One of the things that has helped Midland ISD is the Formula Transition Grant, which will go away. And as we do our budget workshops, we'll kind of show you, because we forecasted out, past where Formula Transition Grant leaves. There were some rumors that they were going to look at maybe start lowering that, but I haven't seen anything in the legislation yet that they're planning on changing anything that they did in House Bill 3.
Is there and we might have talked about this. I'm trying to remember but all the damage that was incurred at this school, this elementary, or whatever. Have you come up with is there a number already out for that, and how is it going to affect our budget?
Are you talking about during the freeze and different things? I would probably have to refer to facilities on that, but there are some, one of the things that we are working through the insurance to see what that they will pick up, and then there is some additional help through the state on that. Once we get what our insurance carriers say that they will pick up, then we will start applying for those. And so,
has there been pushback from the carrier? Has there been pushback from the carrier regarding the event and the fact that they don't?
No, they have been on site to every facility that incurred any damage, and so they're working with us through the claim. We just do not have an overall number yet.
Okay.
And while I typically spend a lot of time talking about how state legislators aren't always education friendly, this is one area where one of the reasons we're not getting pushback is because there's a lot of support at the state level at TEA, including TEA, to make sure that the damage is taken care of and that schools are made whole.
You bet. And go back just a little bit on, we've been through ESSER 1, the CARES Act. There is an ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 now that is being discussed. We don't know how that's going to look or what the state may supplant or, I know that's a bad word, or take and use. There's rumors that they're thinking that ESSER 2 that they would use to the hold harmless that they granted for the rest of the year, that they'll use some of that money for that. I do think there'll be some holes filled through the ESSER. Now, what it looks like when it gets to the district level, I don't know. The first ESSER was $3.3 million that was supplanted for Midland ISD, and then we were able to take some expenses through the federal grant. Our part for ESSER 2 will be a little over $14 million, but we don't know if we'll get all that. That's if they don't take any. Our part for ESSER 3 is roughly $33 million. We don't know what any of this will look like because they have not given any guidance on how that will come down or what the state will do for that. So,
but if we can add that MISD administration, several of us are working with our state legislators and imploring that we receive our dollars and that we also have the ability to use the money, especially for ESSER 3, over at least a 3-year period, knowing that we're going to have needs due to the quote-unquote COVID slide, where we will need additional professional development for teachers in first teaching, spiraling and review of standards from past years, and intensive supports for students and so on. So we are working on it.
So, and then of course we'll start you can go to the next slide. Unless y'all had any more questions on that. I know that 143 looks daunting, and I can tell you none of us want to pay that bill, but that is something that is part of the funding formula. We're looking at our budget timeline. We're looking at April 7th as our first budget workshop at noon. We will receive our preliminary values April 30th from MCAD. That is a preliminary number that we'll use to work towards the May workshop, which is tentatively scheduled for May 5th. And look at adoption of the compensation plan also during that time. And then in June 8th, which will be an afternoon meeting, the third board workshop, and then look at a passage of the budget on June 28th when we have our regular scheduled board meeting. Any questions? Thank you all.
Mr. Dodds, I just want to say thank you. Your team and you continue to do a great job, and I see Ms. Martin out here as well, and I don't see anybody else in the finance team here tonight, but we just want you to know you guys are doing a great job, and we look forward to many, many results of this same thing. If y'all get to come forward and tell us how well we're doing statewide and on a local level of getting recognized for the things y'all are doing, so we really appreciate the work.
Well, thank you. Tony Kingman ran out of here because he was afraid I was going to call him up for the Military Sport Budget Award. And so anyway, his team has done an excellent job in setting our budgets. And of course, Carla Martin and team does a great job. Couldn't ask for a better team. So
Thank you. Okay, item number 7 on the agenda is district reports. A, superintendent update is found on page 100. Item B, chief of staff update is found on page 102. Item C, operations update found on page 104. And item D, staffing update is found on page 109. I've not been notified or seen any correspondence from the board about any of these reports. Do I hear any from a board member that needs to ask a question about one of these reports?
Yeah, just real quick, Dr. Ramsey, you're obviously new to our district, so can you just give us real quick brief update, so how's your visits gone and
Sure.
how you meet with our population of professionals out there?
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the reasons that I added a superintendent's report under the written reports is to be able to provide the public as well, obviously as the board, kind of an update. This is officially 1 month. I started on February 22nd, and since then, I believe I'm up to about 140 members that I've not necessarily corresponded with via email, but met with and had stakeholder meetings with. Our internal staff stakeholder meetings have begun, and I've gotten to 20 of our 40 schools so far. I'll get to more this week, and the both internal and external stakeholder meetings continue. We're going to open up to have some stakeholder meetings for like community meetings. We're working with Elaine on that, on what that will look like, and then we're working with our principals because we want to begin the superintendent advisories for students, parents, and teachers, and those populations will be selected by each principal. So we're hit the ground running, meeting a lot of people, learning a lot, and I know I said it last time, but just want to say how appreciative I am of the warm welcome the entire community for our family. I mean, the phone calls, cards, you name it. I just really appreciate just the warm welcome that we've received. And outside of that, just getting to events as well, everything from graduations to sporting events, and trying to just, I think at this point, I feel like I'm a part of the MISD family, and so it's really nice to just be here and continue the learning. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of speak a little bit to the written report.
I just want to comment. I really appreciate your Monday messages. I took it upon myself to try and replicate that on my social media, on Instagram. And I just think it's done a wonderful job of kind of demystifying what's happening in the district. And I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate it. It's a welcomed refresher. So, Mr. Murray, I did have one thing that I had asked Dr. Adkins, and I only bring it up so that the public can be made aware. She's in charge of the literary initiative team, and I know that there's been a lot of focus after the calendar discussion about our literacy strategists, and I would like to say that she has confirmed for me that we will have a literacy strategist on every campus, and the new description of what that looks like for the job description has been posted online. And I just appreciate that, and I'm excited as we move forward. Dr. Adkins, and if you have anything to add, just let me know, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Schoen, for pointing that out, and Dr. Adkins, thank you for all your work, and I know Dr. Goodnow and Dr. Ramsey, y'all have all been at it, and I wanted to add to one thing that Dr. Ramsey didn't say is that we were on spring break, and she worked the entire week. She didn't take a day off, so she tried to stay ahead of the game and trying to do some catch up in the middle of having all of her meetings and meeting with people. So I appreciate how she's jumped in with both feet and really hit the ground running. We'll move on to item number 8, discussion action items. The first one is A, resolution to pay staff during emergency district closure. Mr. Pounds.
I think we all can agree it's not the staff's fault that we had the winter apocalypse. I would make a motion to approve the resolution to authorize payment to employees during the district's emergency closure in February 2021.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Bishop. Should I read the motion or resolution? Oh,
I'm Booker.
no, I know, but Bishop said it first. I'm
Oh,
pretty
did you?
sure.
Oh, God, he don't.
I didn't say that. Mr. Skiddy, you want to read the resolution?
The DEA local, right?
No, it's the next tab.
Page 117.
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Just close that one.
Oh.
You don't have to read the whole thing. I can provide a summary if you'd like.
Yes, go ahead. I just want to make sure that our public is aware of what we're doing, so.
Yeah, so basically, this is a resolution that we're recommending the board adopt to pay all employees, non-exempt and exempt, for the days of the winter weather storm closure in February. So from February 12th to the 21st, which would include the working days of the 12th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th. This is in accordance with DEA local, and as you'll see there in the cover page, DEA local also requires us, if we do approve this type of resolution, to pay all non-exempt employees who are asked to work during the emergency closure at premium pay, which is time and a half.
Absolutely.
So we believe there's a legitimate public purpose for this because it morale, retaining employees. So we're presenting that to the board for adoption.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gischetti, a second by Mr. Bishop, a second and a half by Mr. Booker. All in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, board. The next item is item C, adoption of an order authorizing redemption of certain outstanding bonds. Mr. Dodds or board?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis, a second by Mr. Bishop. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, board. At this time, we will move to item 9. It's a closed session in accordance with Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subject matters authorized by law, and Section 551.074 for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or an employee, or to hear complaints or charges against a public officer or employee. The time is now 9:10, and we will adjourn. For executive session, and we do have action items after this. If you would like to stay, if not, we will see you. And thank you for being here tonight. The time is now 10:15, and we're emerging from closed session. We do have action items. Item number 10, action arising from closed session. A, discussion and possible approval of employee contract renewal extensions, and authorize superintendent to issue contracts.
Mr. Murray, I make a motion to approve employee contract renewals and extensions, both term and probationary, and authorize the superintendent to issue contracts.
Second.
We have a first by Mr. Gischetti, a second by Mr. Bishop. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. That is the last item on our agenda, and we will adjourn at 10:16. Thank you.